Meeting is being held in council chamber, open to public 10 participation. Let's see here. We're not doing this. Oh, are we being recorded? Then, okay. This meeting is being held in the council chambers, which are open for public attendance and participation. The meeting will also be live streamed for public viewing, but not participation at the link identified in the agenda. Email comments sent and received by the city clerk at least 24 hours before the meeting were distributed to the city council prior to the meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Harris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Budengarten.
Here.
Councilmember Kirchner.
Present.
Councilmember Pasquale.
Here.
All right. Mr. City Attorney, would you please let us know what we're going to be discussing in closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We will have one item on closed session as confer with real property negotiator pursuant to Government Code Section 54956.8. The property is a portion of 806 Gray Avenue, 824 Clark Avenue, Yuba City, California, 95991 and 1545 Pool Boulevard, Yuba City, 95993, the cell tower use. Negotiator is Diana Langley, city manager. Negotiating parties are TowerPoint and AT&T. Under negotiations, the price of terms of payments. And I believe we may have a recusal as well, Mr. Mayor.
You believe what? A recusal on this one? Okay.
I have a recusal. I'm recusing myself. I have a financial interest in property located that's going to be discussed.
Okay, very good. Thank you for that. Do we have any comments from the Tony Curlin? Apparently not. All right. Then we will adjourn to closed session. Minus our... Okay. We'll go ahead and call the order a little bit late. Thank you all for your patience. This meeting is being held in the city council chambers, which are open for public attendance and participation. The meeting will also be live streamed for public viewing, but not participation at the link identified in the agenda. Email comments sent and received by the city clerk at least 24 hours before the meeting were distributed to the city council prior to the meeting. May I have roll call, please?
Mayor Harris.
Here.
Vice Mayor Shaw.
Here.
Councilmember Budengarten.
Here.
Councilmember Kirchner.
Here.
Councilmember Pasquale.
Here.
All right, very good. If everyone can please stand for an invocation by Councilmember Kirchner, and I will go ahead and lead the pledge.
Please bow your head. Heavenly Father, we come before you to humbly ask for your guidance on the decisions this body will make tonight. Let these decisions not to be to our glorification, but yours and what is best for our community. Be with our first responders who are in harm's way this evening, making sure we are safe, and comfort their families with a peace of mind that you are watching over them. Lastly, be with the decision makers in Sacramento and Washington, D.C., who create national policy and bestow upon them your wisdom and purpose for this country. In your name we pray. Amen. Salute and pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, Mr. City Attorney, do we have anything to report from closed session?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. There was no reportable action in closed session.
All right, thank you. Any agenda modifications? Seeing none, we'll move on to number 2. The city welcome sign winner proclamation for Raveena Sroya. Is Raveena here? She is. Well, come on down. Come on down front. All right, so we have, as you all probably know, we have welcome signs at on Highway 99, excuse me, on Highway 99 and Highway 20 as you enter the city. Those things were falling apart. Time to be replaced. So we had a call to artists, and we have received several suggestions. as to what the new sign should look like. And here is your winner right here, standing in front of you. She has a check. You're gonna have a hard time getting that in the ATM, but it's worth $200. And congratulations to you. And this is the proclamation. Whereas the City Council, Yuba City, recognize the importance of a welcoming and aesthetically pleasing entrance to our community, reflecting the spirit, history, and aspirations of our city. A welcome sign design competition was initiated to engage the creativity and talents of our residents. The competition received submissions from individuals of all ages and backgrounds, demonstrating the diverse artistic talent and civic pride present in our city. The City Council established an ad hoc committee to review and evaluate each submission based on criteria of creativity, alignment with city branding, aesthetic appeal, relevance to the community, feasibility of implementation, and overall impression. 3 designs were selected as finalists and reviewed by the City Council, and whereas the winning design will serve as a gateway to our city and a source of pride to our residents. Now therefore be it resolved that I, Sean Harris, Mayor of the City of Yuba City, and on behalf of the entire council, do hereby officially announce and congratulate Raveena Sroya? Sroya, I'm sorry, that's not a T, it's an R, as the winner of the Welcome Sign Design Competition. The City Council extends its heartfelt gratitude to all participants for their contributions and efforts, acknowledging that every submission has added value to this initiative and highlighted the artistic spirit of our community. The winning design by Raveena Sroya will be moved forward in the process to prepare for bid and construction as the new welcome sign of the City of Yuba City, standing as a testament to the collaborative spirit and creative talent of our residents. So congratulations, ma'am. Good job. We have a... Well, there's your money. And we have a little gift for you from the city, and I believe we might be getting... Oh, Ben is there. He's always so reliable with that camera. All right. Would you like to say anything?
Sure.
All right.
Well, thank you, Mayor Harris and council members. Just wanted to say thank you for Ashley for her time and effort in putting this together. I thought it was a great idea to have the community involved in getting the sign, and I really enjoyed, getting some ideas together, and I'm honored to have been selected, so thank you.
Well, congratulations. There you go. To you. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right, we're done. All right, next up, we have a quarterly development update presentation by Ashley Potocnik, our development liaison. Welcome, Ashley. Good to see you.
Thank you. Happy to be here, Mayor and members of the City Council, to give a quarterly update on all things happening, well, not all things, some things happening in development services and public works. So we're going to cover a lot of topics, but I'm going to keep it nice and brief for you. This is just the highlights. There's a lot more info where this came from. So if anyone has questions about stuff that's going on in the city in regards to development, whether it's infrastructure, or we're going to talk about some digital infrastructure, new updates, feel free to reach out to me. My card is in the foyer. So we will talk about the You Can with Yuba City initiative and how that ties in with economic development. We'll talk about planning, building, housing, and the community development block grant program, public works, and then code enforcement updates. These are also always available on the city website. So one really fun highlight that was released in the last quarter was from the California Department of Finance. They released a report that said Yuba City is the 7th fastest growing city in California for cities with a population over 50,000. So that's a pretty cool stat to see that not only do we think Yuba City is moving and growing, but on a statewide level, we're really up there. So many of you know about the You Can with Yuba City initiative because I talk about it every time I'm in front of you. And you might wonder how is the UCAN with Yuba City initiative related to economic development? UCAN with Yuba City is a business and development support initiative, which is hand in hand with what economic development is. The purpose of economic development is to help to build the city, whether it be infrastructure, businesses, improving the local economy, and improving the quality of life for the residents, which is directly in line with Council's strategic goals. So some of the things that we've been working on in economic development and UCAN with Yuba City is partnering with regional partners, such as the Small Business Development Council. They are doing office hours in Yuba City once a month. The fourth Wednesday of the month, you can come here to City Hall, meet with advisors for free. This is free advising for the community to talk about their potential business ideas, their current business, how they can expand, etc. So our next office hour event is July 24th here at City Hall. We also have the Shop Talk initiative, which has been ongoing for the last year and a half now. And our most recent Shop Talk was at the Happy Viking last month. We talked about the potential revenue measure, and it was a really great turnout of business owners and community members to come together, connect with the city, ask questions, and really kind of bridge that gap between business owners and local government. Another thing that we just heard about was the new welcome sign. So this is a big thing in the city overall, but as well for the UCAN with Yuba City initiative, because economic development and business support and development, it matters the image of the city on a local scale and on a regional scale, and having high quality imagery when you're entering Yuba City is a big part of that. So we're really excited about the new welcome sign and for the process to continue to get those actually installed. Additionally, thanks to the city manager's office, my voice is not working, and particularly to Sierra, the new city website is a big thing. This is new digital infrastructure that's going to help the community better access public record, better access information about council meetings, development that's happening, etc. It is officially live, so be sure to check it out and let us know what you think. With any new website, you might find some little hiccups, but that's how things go. And we're really excited for what this will give to the community. So in planning, there's also a lot going on. In planning, we have a lot of new projects happening in southern Yuba City. This is south of Bogue Road. The Newcomb development includes residential, commercial, and office development, and that's what you can see here on this map. Additionally, there is a project under review on West Onstott, so north Yuba City, in the Butte Vista area for a 37-lot single-family development. These projects are currently under review by the Planning Division. Some projects that have recently been approved include a new senior assisted living facility on East Onstott Road, as well as a new monument sign for the Harder Marketplace development. That's a big development currently happening now, and we're approved for a 26-foot monument sign, as well as a couple use permits for a gas station and a quick serve restaurant close to Franklin and Walton. So on both corners, the north and the south corner, there were projects recently approved. In the building division, there's a lot of construction happening, particularly in the Harder Marketplace development area. If you drive out by Walmart, you're gonna see it. Raising Cane's is popping up pretty fast, and Dutch Brothers, I think, is gonna come quickly after that. Arco gas station also has plans in for review, but the permit is still under review and hasn't been issued at this point. Another big project is the Rayleigh Shopping Center. You can see on these images the before and after. Of course, it's not completed yet, but you can really see the difference in the facade and the structure by just some facelift on the exterior. Regarding housing, there are several subdivisions that are continuing to be under construction, but a big thing that's new in the last quarter is that Harder North, so this is north of DRS Baines Park, they've started site work. I was just out there today and you can see they're getting ready for roads and infrastructure in that area. So that will bring an additional 73 single-family homes. Oh, I missed this important thing to note. The stats here on the right-hand side are pretty impactful. In this year, we have issued 50 new single-family residential homes. That's pretty big for Yuba City. I didn't pull the stats for last year, but I think it was less than 30 last year. So already in 6 months, we have, we're getting close to doubling what we did last year. So things are really happening, and this is an indicator of what the Department of Finance for the state of California is saying. Like, we are growing here in Yuba City. So that's really exciting. The Community Development Block Grant Program recent project list includes several projects that will really benefit the community, including the Yuba Sutter Food Bank, some park equipment replacement, the Homeless Consortium, and several others. And these projects, the action plan, as they call it for CDBG, is going to be submitted to HUD for final review. Regarding infrastructure, the stuff under the ground that maybe isn't that sexy, but it's really important. There's a really cool infrastructure project happening right now to Berry Elementary School. So Berry Elementary School is outside of city limits, but the city is doing a clean water infrastructure project to Berry Elementary School to provide them with high quality water. This is a really exciting project because it's bringing clean water and good high quality water to an elementary school. I think everyone can get on board with that. And on the map in the yellow is where the new water line will be. And there's also work happening along Harder Parkway for a new wastewater infrastructure line. That's important for those new homes over in Harder, as well as for commercial development there. But additionally at DRS Baines Park, the restroom that's there right now I think is on septic. So having the wastewater infrastructure will be big to connect that bathroom to that infrastructure. Public Works is also hard at work with patch paving projects. These pictures show some of the recent work that they're working on El Margarita Road. And then next they'll be working on Walton Avenue. One fun stat was they told me in 4 days they used 62 tons of asphalt, which seems like a lot, but it's great to see them out there patching the roads. Code enforcement is also hard at work to maintain the visual appeal of our city, to clean up areas where need to be cleaned up in collaboration with SRCC teams. They're also working with the weed abatement and weed mitigation, especially this summer with the fire hazards. That's a big element. So they partnered with the fire department on that program. Additionally, code enforcement continues to work on the enforcement of illegal mobile vendors and are even working after hours to work on that enforcement. Another thing that council will be aware of is the new ordinance that was recently adopted regarding trailers, boats, and RVs. There's more info to come on that. I don't have a pretty picture for you yet explaining all of the changes, but more info to come. Keep an eye on our website about those changes to the ordinance. So that's my highlights of what's going on. Like I said, there's definitely more that can be shared, but I appreciate the time before you, council, to share with you some things that have been happening in the last quarter, and would just stress that this You Can with Yuba City initiative is good and helpful for the city, for the community. It's really for the community, for the business owners, for the developers, so that if you're wanting to do something in Yuba City, whether it's build or start a business or start selling your homemade bread, whatever it is, contact me and we can make it happen. That's what You Can with Yuba City is all about. So thank you, and if you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
I don't know, I don't have any questions, Ashley. I will say you are very busy and are always present and doing your things, willing to help with people, and it really shows. So thank you very much for that. I did have a chance to go through the website today, and I'm happy to report I didn't find any glitches. If anybody would, it would be me, trust me. Or they usually find me. But council members have said anything? Very good.
Yeah, through the mayor, Ashley, I'm consistently impressed by the stuff that's going on. And I know that you're one of many, but you are the focal point when businesses look for retention or recruitment, and I really appreciate it. And it can't go without saying, it's always nice to see the pretty signs go up, but it's far better when the construction materials actually come popping out of the ground, and we got a lot of that going on. Thank you.
Through the mayor. Actually, I just want to take this opportunity, and I'm sure the rest of the council feels the same way as Mark just indicated himself, but about 4 years ago, we were sitting at this dais and in meetings talking about what we needed for development services and how we needed your position, and you've knocked it out of the park. So I just want to express a thank you from myself, and I'm sure the rest of the council, for a job well done, and keep it up. You're doing great.
Good, gents. All right, thank you very much, Ashley. Moving on to item number 4, public communication. You are welcome and encouraged to participate in this meeting. Public comment is taken on the agenda items appearing on the consent calendar or business items on the agenda when they are called. Public comment on any other items within the scope of the city's jurisdiction, including items not listed on the agenda, will be considered at this time. Public comment is limited to 3 minutes per speaker. Members of the public submitting written requests at least 24 hours prior to the meeting will be allotted 5 minutes to comment per speaker. Repetitive comments may be limited, and large groups are encouraged to select representatives to express the opinions of the group. Do we have any comments from the public? Seeing none, we'll move on to consent calendar. All matters listed under consent calendar are considered to be routine and can be enacted in one motion. There will be no separate discussion of these items prior to the time that council votes on the motion unless members of the city council request specific items to be discussed or removed from the consent calendar for individual action. Do we have any comments from the public on consent calendar items 5 through 8? Seeing none, we can have a motion.
Mr. Mayor?
Yes, sir.
I must recuse myself from item number 8 as I have a financial interest in one of the properties that are affected. Potential
Okay.
financial interest.
So that means that when you vote yea or nay, you will be not referring to anything to do with number 8.
Correct.
There we go. Correct, sir? All right, good. Finally.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
If we don't have any other recusals, okay. Move to approve consent calendar 5 through 8.
Second.
I have a first and a second to approve the consent calendar items 5 through 8 with the exception of Councilmember Bloomgarden will not be voting on number 8. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, passes unanimously. Move on to business items. Begin with number 9, an RFP 23-03 for Enterprise Resource Planning, Systems and Implementation Services Bid Award presented by Mr. Hanson. Welcome, Brian.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the council. As you said, we are bringing to you the ERP Systems and Implementation Services Bid Award. Very exciting for us. Just a little bit of background. Our existing solution is Proclamation, is what we refer to it. It's now under a different name, but we purchased this back in 1997. You heard me talk about this before, but it is very long in the tooth. It definitely got our money's worth and ready for replacement. The system itself does financials, human resources, payroll, community development, and utility billing. We've updated it several times over the last 25 plus years, but the base system is pretty much the same as what we bought 25 years ago. It's not user-friendly. It doesn't comply with all our current state and federal reporting standards. And just people, it's hard to learn this older system. It's not intuitive. And therefore, it's not productive for a lot of users. So staff looked into it, and we projected that a purchase implementation cost of $1.5 million to replace this system. Council did approve $1.5 million into a CIP project using ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act of 2021. In addition, in October of 2022, City Council authorized the staff to get into a professional service agreement with SDI Presence LLC. They were brought in to develop the RFP. It's a very complex project, and we needed external help to put it together. So we got to work right away on it, and in June of 2023, we released the RFP to the public, and then in July 28th of 2023, the RFP was opened. And these are the results of that bid opening. Now, these amounts are for the base requirements of the RFP. We also had optional items that aren't included in these costs. A couple things to note on this. There is the bid from Oracle America. It did not include everything that we required as part of the bid process, so it was included in this list, but it was rejected because it was incomplete. Another one from NeoGov was turned in late, so we were not able to consider that as part of this bid. One thing that's important to note is what is missing. Our existing vendor, Central Square, did not submit an RFP for a new system. They do have a system available that would have worked with our needs. For whatever reason, they did not submit it. So the city formed a review committee to evaluate these proposals and determine our next steps. So the proposals were evaluated based on the completeness of the proposal, software features, ease of use, company background, support options and user groups, how easy is it to talk to other users about the product, our ability to provide California-specific features and reports, which is very important for us, and technology infrastructure and price. Technology infrastructure is also important because all the systems in this RFP are cloud-based. Right now we are on-premise, so we have full control of the infrastructure. With these new systems, we would be completely reliant on the third party that's providing it. So the review committee evaluated all the proposals, and we came up with 2 proposals that we were going to move on to our POC, our proof of capabilities. So you might ask, what is a POC? So the POC is an in-depth review of the vendor's proposal, determining which best suited for the city. The vendor invited each vendor to come on site and review their proposal and answer any questions the city has. Each POC lasted 3 days. So the vendor came on site for 3 days straight and gave us a full demo of the product and answered any questions that city staff had. Staff were invited to come participate in the POCs from every department, so we got good feedback from each department that would be involved with the product. And upon completion, we gathered up all those reviews and we took the proposals and came to a recommendation that we were going to submit to the executive team. Because this is a citywide project, we wanted to make sure we had buy-in from all departments before we moved forward. So this recommendation that we sent to the executive team was for the Tyler Technologies Enterprise ERP. So staff, SDI, our contractor who's helping us out, and with help from the city attorney, evaluated what was proposed, and then we went into negotiations to clarify final contract language, options and services that we wanted to add on to the base RFP, and the final pricing. So the final negotiated price from this negotiations was $1,256,370. So that is more than the initial bid you see in the previous page, because that does include some optional items that were added on. To note, we did also get a larger discount on the products we are proposing. So we were adding extra items, but the overall cost only raised a little bit because of the larger discounts. So this is a complex project, and it has plenty of challenges you're going to see. The biggest one probably is the funding source. This is ARPA funds, and ARPA funds have specific deadlines that have to be met for the money that had to be spent. So all funds must be allocated by December of 2024, and then all funds must be invoiced by December of 2026. So this really was what kind of drove our timeline for the project. So we submitted this to Tyler, and they came back in their proposal with a 2-year deployment. So we're going to start with financials. It's a 12-month implementation, and then we're moving on to HR. There's a 2-month overlap in order to meet our timeline. So for a short while we're going live with finance, we're also starting the implementation of HR. So that's going to be a very busy 2 months for staff. That leads me to the next point, staffing. This is a big ask for finance and HR, especially finance with being a little shorter on staff right now. We're going to have to go out for extra help. So part of the proposal that we've already got approved was for supplemental staff for the project. So finance will be bringing in some retired annuitants to help backfill daily work, while employees work on the implementation and testing of the new system. HR is going to be going out to a third party to bring staffing in. Another thing to consider is the dual system requirements. So this is a 2-year project, but we're going to have 2 systems at the same time. So we have to maintain 2 systems, but we also have to pay for 2 systems. So there is going to be additional cost those 2 years while we implement. Another thing with the existing system is utility billing module will continue to stay with the old system for the time being. So we'll have to continue to maintain that and pay for that module. Hopefully something more will come from that shortly. And then the final thing is just the unknown. We just have a very tight timeline. There's only a small amount of room for slippage in that timeline, so we need to be careful that we are on top of everything so that we don't put any of those ARPA funds in jeopardy. So the physical impact, there's a lot of information here, and I'll try to break it down. So the overall project cost is projected to be $2,037,827. This is made up of the $1,256,370 for the purchase and implementation of the software. $478,790 is for SDI Presence, who is our project manager. So part of that money has already been spent on developing the RFP. The rest of the money will be they're basically going to be our project manager on the city side. So they're going to make sure that we are on task, that Tyler is living up to their end of the bargain, and everything is completed in a timely manner. So that's important. And then the final amount there, the $302,000, is what staff is projecting for the need for excess staffing to cover and backfill. So what's that made up of? So that's the $1.5 million that you originally allocated for this project from the ARPA funds, plus in the last council meeting, $650,000 was allocated to that CIP project. That money was made up of ARPA funds and some of the computer ISF fund from the technology fund. We've been putting money aside for the eventual replacement of our Penimation system, so there's money available in that fund to transfer. And with that, the current budget now does contain enough funds to cover the entire project. So of course, there's alternatives. You can reject the RFP results, direct staff to resubmit RFP with a deadline of December 2024 in order to still use the ARPA funding. Second is you can just not purchase the ERP software and continue using existing software and reallocate those ARPA funds to a different project. Or do not purchase the ERP software and direct staff to upgrade our existing software using those CIP funds. I just want to highlight again, those ARPA funds must be allocated by December 2024. So no matter what happens, staff will need direction on how to use those funds, because those are use it or lose it funds. So that brings us to our recommendation. It's to adopt a resolution awarding the RFP to Tyler Systems, Inc. in the amount of $1,256,370. In your packet is the attachment Exhibit A, which details that contract. Authorize the city manager to execute that contract, and authorize the city manager to make any non-material, technical, or clerical edits and corrections to the agreement. And with that, I'll answer any questions.
Through the mayor, first question, are you going to stay on for the entire implementation?
Depends on how high my stress level gets. No, I do plan on being around for a
I
while.
know a business system integration's a big deal. Second is, I'd like to be invited to the memorial service when we retire Penimation, please, because I remember having to use that.
It'll be a virtual retirement since everything's virtualized now, so we won't have a box to destroy or anything, but we'll have a sentimental goodbye.
I guess the other thing is do you have like an end date when I know there'll be hiccups, but when do you anticipate this getting rid of Penimation and being able to turn the key all the way over to Tyler Technologies?
So for the finance and HR module, we should have everything done by October of 2026. So we're shooting for having that final quarter be the changeover to the new system. But like I said previously, the utility billing module is still on Penimation. And there's historical data on Penimation that we'll want to keep around for some time until everything's been migrated over. I know there's some plans in process to find alternatives for utility billing, with Tyler being one of the options for that. Right now, we're just looking at funding sources.
Thank you.
Any comments from the public on the item? Oh, you had something?
Yeah, I had
Go
something. I
ahead.
thought my brother down there had something. I just want to know, you've got everything baked in to what's, I've been through a couple migrations in my firm over 30 years, and the only person that ever said, oh, it's going to go smoothly is the salesperson, because they never do. There's hiccups. Do we have enough built in with the additional staff? And because we're basically going to be doing double the work for 2 years. That's the way this works. And I just want to make sure we have what we need so we don't have any surprises down the line.
I believe we do. So we put in the extra money for staffing, and then if you did the math on that previous screen, you'll notice that the 1.5 and the 6.5 is actually more than the 2,037,000. So there is a little bit of buffer left in that CIP project if we need to come back for additional authorization.
Okay. Wish us the best of luck, because they are tough. So thank you.
Nothing? All right, public comment? Nothing, okay. You ready for action?
Through the mayor, recommend that we adopt the resolution which takes the following action. Do I need to read the whole? No? Okay, so move to adopt.
Second.
All right. First and second to adopt the action recommended by staff. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, passes unanimously. Thank you, Brian.
Thank you.
Enjoy that.
Good luck.
Moving on to number 10, 422 B Street Environmental Assessment Contract Award. Hello, Kevin. Kevin Bradford, Deputy Director of Public Works, Engineering Division.
Good evening, Mayor, members of the City Council. As a user of Penimation, I can't thank you enough for your approval of the previous item. Item 10 before you tonight is an award of a consultant contract for an environmental assessment at 442 B Street. I've got a little exhibit here. So 442 B Street is located at the southwest corner of B and Wilbur. We have B along the top, Wilbur right here, and then the town center fountain is right here. The red lines, if you're curious, are areas of environmental concern that have been previously identified. The light blue and dark blue are previous soil explorations, excavations, and borings that were done in the past to help quantify those red areas. So a little background on the site. There's a lot of history here, of course. In the late 1800s through 1940s, it operated as a canning and packaging operation. 1946 through the early 90s, it was an ag chemical company. In the early 90s, the site was demolished and cleared, and then the city streets were reconfigured down in the town center area, and it remains a vacant lot today. In 1994, when the state did away with the redevelopment agencies, in 1994, the former redevelopment agency acquired title to the property. And then in 2010, the city hired a consultant to do a phase 1 environmental assessment. And that assessment identified 16 areas of environmental concerns, 12 of which were likely to have resulted in a release of hazardous substances. Those substances include fuels, solvents, preservatives, pesticides, herbicides, and fertilizers. And then getting to the redevelopment agency, when the state did away with those in the early 2010s, the city council elected to become the successor agency to the redevelopment agency, and then title in the property was officially transferred to the successor agency. Last year, Diana became aware of an opportunity to get some grant funding to bring this site to a condition where we could potentially redevelop it. And with her leadership and your approval, the city staff applied for and received over $2 million in Equitable Community Revitalization Grant Program funds. Those funds will go towards a phase 2 environmental assessment, which further quantifies the exact scope and nature of the contaminants. It will help evaluate potential cleanup methods, and it will also result in the development of a plan to implement a cleanup operation. And in May, staff issued a request for proposals via the public purchase website. And this new tool that we're using is pretty instrumental in getting the word out to consultants and contractors who might be interested in this kind of work. Normally, we might get like 2 or 3 proposals on a job like this, but we got 7, and they were from all really competitive, highly ranked firms. So engineering and development services staff reviewed the proposals, and I've got some criteria here that we reviewed the proposals based on. The middle 3 were the most heavily weighted ones, which was an understanding of the actual project, the qualifications of their team, and what kind of scope of work they put together. And with that, EKI Environment and Water, which has an office in Davis, was unanimously ranked as the most qualified consultant. They're highly technically qualified, as most of the 7 were, but what really set them out apart from the rest of the group was their community outreach program. So the grant program really puts a strong emphasis on reaching out to the community to discuss the cleanup proposals, let the community know what's out there, what kind of cleanup plan might be proposed, and then also what does the community want for that kind of development in that particular location. Our application focused on mixed use development, but that whole decision needs to come before you, Planning Commission, and involve the community. So with EKI, their sub-consultant actually wrote the community outreach guidelines for the oversight agency that oversees these funds. So they definitely know what they're doing when it comes to community outreach. That's also a task that would really help out our staff, because it's not something we do a lot. So here's their proposed scope of work, and what I really want to highlight is these optional tasks down here. So the contract before you tonight, it actually includes all of these optional tasks, and we're asking for your authorization to approve the contract with those tasks in there, with the understanding that we won't actually authorize those tasks to be implemented until such time that the oversight agencies, staff, and the consultants all agree that it's the right thing that's necessary to move the project forward. With a multi-year project like this, with explorations that go on that are going to kind of dictate what you need to do in the subsequent steps, it's hard to know whether any of these optional tasks really are needed or not. So we've got them in there. We won't use them unless they're absolutely necessary. Tonight, you're acting as both the city council and also the board of the successor agency. So with your approval tonight, you'll issue a right of entry to the property, which is still owned by the successor agency. So the city needs that, city staff and our consultant needs that right of entry authorization. And we'd issue a notice to proceed next Monday. The grant timeline is March of 2026. For a fiscal impact, the estimated project costs are about $1.76 million. That includes the consultant contract, regulatory oversight, which is basically we have to pay a fee to the water board to consult with us, and then staff management of the project. The grant funding was a little over $2 million, so there's plenty of grant funding to fund that $1.76 million, and it's entirely, the whole project would be grant funded, and we've got that budgeted in account number 1334. So with that, staff recommendation is to adopt a joint resolution awarding the 442 B Street Environmental Assessment Contract to EKI Environment and Water in the amount of $1.575 million, with the finding that it is in the best interest of the city, and authorizing the city manager to approve optional tasks therein upon concurrence of the appropriate regulatory agency. With that, I'll take any questions.
Jim, any comment from the public? All right, we're down to action then.
Through the mayor, Move to approve staff's recommendation.
Second?
All right, first and second to approve staff recommendation. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously.
Thank you.
That's what it feels like to spend $1.5 million. Much like that. Number 11, Yuba City Landscape District Number 1, Yuba City Lighting and Landscape District Number 2, public hearing. And presented by Josh. I think we may have some recusals.
Mayor? Yeah.
Sir?
Mayor, I have to recuse myself. I have property located in this area.
All right.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Same here.
All right. See you in a minute. Josh, you're up.
Good evening, Mayor and members of the City Council. Tonight, I have 4 separate presentations for lighting and landscape districts, so I'll try to keep the presentations pretty concise. The first one is for Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District 1, or Landscape Maintenance District 1 and Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District 2. Landscape Maintenance District 1 covers the area north of town in the just south of the Regency area. District number 1, Zone of Benefit B, covers the Shanghai Garden area, north of Eureka Road, on Garden Highway, south of Lincoln Road, and then along Railroad Avenue as well, from Bogue Road to just south of Lincoln Road. And then lastly, Zone of Benefit 2A covers the Plumas Boulevard area near Town Center. So annually, the city levies and collects special assessments to maintain lighting and landscaping improvements. Assessments were approved by the property owners of record at the time of the district's formation. District 1, zones of benefit A and B do not have cost of living adjustments, and therefore they've been charged the maximum levy from year to year in order to keep the districts afloat. District 1, zones of benefit B1 and B2 were formed in more recent years from the early 2010s to the early 2020s. Those districts were formed with cost of living adjustments. And then District number 2 was formed in the early 2000s and also has cost of living adjustments. Just to formalize the process, on May 21st of 2024, Council ordered the engineer to file a report for the district. And then on June 18th, the Council adopted resolutions approving the engineer's reports for the districts and setting a public hearing for tonight. The engineer's reports have been filed with the city clerk's office. The reports describe the districts, the improvements therein, methods of assessment, and the proposed assessments for each parcel. So for the fiscal impact, District 1, zones A and B, as I've mentioned before, do not have cost of living adjustments. As you can see, we've had revenues of about $22,000 in 1A and $66,000 in 1B. Those numbers haven't changed, or the maximum amounts available for revenue haven't changed since the 1990s. Therefore, you can see the expenditures are somewhat high, even with reductions in service. And then the projected reserve balance in those accounts are both negative. In Zone 2, it does have a cost of living adjustment, and revenue is around $99,000, expenditures $44,000, and the projected reserve is $206,000. With that, a couple alternatives. Council may move forward with canceling the district to find alternative funding sources, or the council may direct staff to follow legal procedures to modify District Number 1 to include cost of living adjustment to match current expenditures with COLA provisions in order to avoid revenue shortfalls in the future. My recommendation to the council tonight is to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 2024-2025 for Yuba City Landscape Maintenance District Number 1 and Yuba City Lighting and Landscape Maintenance District Number 2. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Oh, we have a public hearing to do. The public hearing for Yuba City Landscape District Number 1 and Yuba City Lighting and Landscape District Number 2 is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on the issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to council for action.
Through the mayor. Go ahead, sir.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 2024 and 2025 for the Yuba City Landscape Maintenance District 1 and the Lighting and Landscaping Maintenance District Number 2, Town Center, pursuant to Landscaping and the Lighting Act of 1972.
Second.
We have a first and second to approve. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Josh. And get them. You may as well stay in there. Or no, never mind. My script says you're up next. Should I go in the back room?
Through the mayor, if you
All
want to
right.
go ahead and do that, I need to recuse myself from
Number 12.
item 12.
Thank you, sir. Josh is up again for Yuba City Lighting and Landscape District numbers 3 and 4. Public hearing.
Thank you, Mayor. This presentation, similar to the last, is for the annual levy for lighting and landscape maintenance districts numbers 3 and 4. District number 3 is on the northeast quadrant of Yuba City in the Santa Barbara Way area. Number 4 is in the northwestern quadrant of Yuba City in the Regency Park area. As I previously mentioned, the city annually collects levies and annually levies and collects special assessments to maintain the districts. They were approved by the property owners at the time of formation. Both of these districts do have cost of living adjustments. Once again, the council ordered the engineer to file the engineer's reports on May 21st of this year, and then on June 18th, council adopted resolutions approving the reports and resolutions setting a public hearing for tonight. Engineers' reports are on file in the city clerk's office. The reports describe the improvements for each district, methods of assessments. For these districts, there are increases in both District 3 and 4 due to rising costs for maintenance and materials. Revenue for District 3 is about $17,700. Expenditure is $11,000. Projected reserve $6,000. District number 4 revenue is about $200,000, with expenditures being $152,000 and projected reserve being about $205,000. Alternative, the staff or council could direct the modification of the assessment amounts, which would affect future revenue and expenditure. Staff does not recommend this at this time. What staff does recommend, though, is to conduct a public hearing and adopt a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy assessments for fiscal year 24-25 for Yuba City Lighting and Landscape Maintenance Districts numbers 3 and 4. And I'd be happy to answer any questions about these.
All right. Let's see. Any comment from the public on this? Nothing. We'll go ahead and open public hearing. Public hearing for the Yuba City Lighting and Landscape District numbers 3 and 4 is now open, but if there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment and state your name and address for the record. Now, do we have any public comment? Nothing. Hearing no further comment on this issue, I am closing the public hearing and bringing the matter back to council.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir.
Motion to adopt a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 24-25 for the Yuba City Lighting and Maintenance District, numbers 3 and 4.
Second.
Have a first and second to approve the action. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed, passes unanimously. Number 13, Yuba City Lighting and Landscape District number 5 and 6. This is also a public hearing presented by Josh Wolf. As soon
Mayor,
as Vice Mayor gets back, we have to recuse, and there he is right there. All right.
Could both of you articulate why you're recusing yourself? Thank
I
you.
have property in the location.
I have property in the location.
All right, agenda item 13. I think he's already announced it for the landscape districts number 5 and 6. Sir, you have the floor.
Thank you, council members. So this presentation is for lighting and landscape districts number 5 and 6, similar to the last. Same process as previously mentioned. We annually levy and collect special assessments. Districts numbers 5 and 6 do have cost of living adjustments. So their budgets are adjusted annually based on the cost of, or the CPI, Consumer Price Index, sorry. Once again, council ordered the engineer to file reports on May 21st, 2024, and then on June 18th, 2024, adopted resolutions approving the reports and setting a public hearing for tonight. The engineer's reports are on file. The reports describe the district improvements, methods of assessment for each parcel. For this district, we actually have a mix of changes. District 5, zones of benefit A, B, E, G, H, K, and L have increases in their levy. District 6, zones of benefit A1 through A3, B1 through B4, B6 through B15 have increases. District 5, zones of benefit D, F, I, and J do not have any changes due to account balances that are sufficient. Same with zone of benefit B5 and District 6. And then lastly, District 5 zones of benefit C1 through C10 will be receiving a decrease in their levy due to sufficient budget. Here are the fiscal impacts for these two districts. Revenue for District 5 is about $638,000. Expenditure is about $587,000 with a projected reserve balance of about $297,000. District 6, a revenue of $40,000. Expenditures about $19,000, and then a projected reserve of about $200,000. Once again, council could direct modification of the assessments, which could affect revenue and expenditures in these different accounts. Staff doesn't recommend that. Staff recommends conducting a public hearing and then adopting a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 24-25 for lighting and landscape maintenance districts numbers 5 and 6.
All right, thank you, sir. Any questions from the council? All right, hearing none, we will go ahead and we will open the public hearing for Yuba City Lighting and Landscape Districts number 5 and number 6. Anybody from the public that wish to speak, please go to the podium and state your name and address and speak for the record. Hearing none, we will go ahead and close the public hearing and bring it back to council for action.
My turn, huh? Through the mayor, I'd like to move that we adopt a resolution confirming ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 2024-25 for the Yuba City Lighting and Landscape Maintenance Districts number 5 and 6 pursuant to the Landscaping and Lighting Act of 1972.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor say aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries, and if we could get our fearless leader back.
Short.
All right, now we're on number 14, Yuba City Residential Street Light Maintenance Districts.
Thank you, council. I promise this is my last one. So this presentation is for the residential streetlight maintenance districts in Yuba City, which cover the Terra Buena area and the Walton Avenue area. These districts are similar to lighting and landscape districts, but the difference lies in the fact that these streetlights are owned and maintained by PG&E, and the city pays solely for the operation of the lights. So the city annually levies these special assessments to power the streetlights. These districts were absorbed into were formed under the county's jurisdiction and then annexed into the city as the city expanded. Similar to the others, on May 21st, council ordered the engineer to file reports for these districts. On May 21st, and then on June 18th, council adopted resolutions of intention to order the improvements and set a public hearing for tonight. The engineer's report has been filed with the city clerk's office. The reports describe the district, the improvements, and methods of assessments. One thing about these districts is they do not have cost of living adjustments. Terra Buena area has a revenue of about $25,000, expenditures of about $31,000, and a reserve of about $106,000. Walton area has a revenue of about $82,000, expenditures of about $89,000, and a negative balance of $38,500. The city proposes to continue charging maximum levy due to continually rising power costs. And the city is working to communicate with consultants to see if we can address any discrepancies in billing and make sure that we can cover these areas funding in the future. What staff recommends is conducting a public hearing and adopting a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 24-25 for residential streetlight maintenance district 1, Terra Buena area, and the residential streetlight maintenance district number 1, Walton area. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right. Public hearing for Yuba City Residential Streetlight Maintenance District is now open. If there are any members of the public who would like to address the council on this issue, please provide your statement via public comment. State your name and address for the record. Do we have any comments from the public on this item? Hearing no further comment on the issue, I'm closing public hearing and bringing the matter back to council.
Through the mayor,
Sir.
I'd like to move to adopt a resolution confirming and ordering the annual levy of assessments for fiscal year 2024-25 within Yuba City Residential Streetlight Maintenance District number 1, Terra Buena, and Residential Streetlight Maintenance District number 1, Walton area.
Second.
I have a first and second to approve the recommended action. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? Passes unanimously. Thank you very much, Josh. Good job. Moving on to item number 15, Homekey 3.0 Merriment Village Status Update, presented by Ben Moody.
All right, good evening, everyone. Mayor, members of the City Council. And so the item before you, it's really regards to a status update with Homekey, the status of the Merriment Village project on 428 Walton Avenue. So quick recap just on the status, because there's been a lot of moving parts with this, and the timeline has been relatively quick over the last year and a half. So what I'm talking about today is Merriment Village, the project site, 428 North Walton Avenue, approximately 7.7 acres. Merriment Village, it's a Habitat-led project, 218 unit. Full development is what the plan is for that site to be built out, affordable units. They broke that into phase 1, so a strategy for funding and to go after grants is that particularly what we're dealing with at the moment is phase 1. So it's the 4-story, 79 unit building along Walton Avenue. And so that's what was coordinated, that has been coordinating for the application for Homekey funds. So quick timeline, over the last year and a half, we've worked through our housing element that's talked about providing a variety of homes in Yuba City and supporting that. Early 2023, February and March, they've had community workshops. They've come to City Council and discussed their project. They've worked through entitlements. And so in April of 23, they worked with the city. They came to City Council and gave a presentation where there was authorization to have a joint application submitted for Homekey funds to help support that in coordination with Habitat and Yuba City. And then in May, that application was submitted. So May of last year, the application was submitted. And then right after that, we started to get into the entitlements. So the city council has seen this project many times where then we came back and rezoned and changed the general plan land use to allow that density, and then the zoning to allow the multifamily complex, and then also approved the development plan with the planning commission in August and finalized in September. And then the big news came in February of this year when the state issued an award letter for $24.6 million. And then recently, and this is where a little bit of the frustration and the crunch comes through, is that even though the award letter was issued in February, we didn't get the standard agreement with those specific terms until June of this year, just recently. And then they put a little caveat on there that says, hey, it has to be signed and executed within 30 days, in a big push. And so with that, there's definitely discussion and options going forward, but there's a few things that were highlighted that gives us reservation that at the same time we want to work through with Habitat, and there's additional information that's come up. And so one of the big things that came through the standard agreement was the funding uncertainty. There was understanding that it was state funds, but they might be using federal ARPA funds, and then that causes concern regarding the bids, some of the procurement processes, the environmental processes. But we have recent news as of today that even though they're ARPA federal funds, they're exempt from doing the NEPA environmental. And so that was a big deal that came out today. And so part of this, we put this staff report in discussion to City Council to bring it forward, and there's current news and the team's here to help bring some more information. The project cost, bids have been submitted, and my understanding is Hilbers is working through those to figure out the cost, but there is some gap funding needs, and that's where my understanding is we're going to have some potential discussion on that and how to secure that. But that's one of the big concerns, is that grant funds are short from what the project needs. And then the schedule. The schedule is just blatantly, it's unrealistic for the Homekey, but at the same time, a lot of these federal programs, that's how they structure them. They say you got a year from the date 6 months ago, and we haven't even entered into the agreement. And so, but it definitely puts us into question as what the ultimate timeline is. What is what's the flexibility with the state on how do you really deliver and construct a project when they're trying to tell you it's got to be built and everything, occupied in a time frame that's just not realistic for building construction and doing that. And so with that, this item was really to bring these topics forward, talk about some potential material terms, and figure out how we can move forward as the city with this expectation that this agreement needs to be entered into in partnership with Habitat, and how do we address some of those concerns. And so tonight really it's a recommendation to discuss the project status, receive current information, and provide direction to staff. And I know City Attorney Shannon Chaffin has some information regarding potential processes to get us there.
Thank you so much, Mr. Moody. As you know, there's a lot of moving parts on this. Things are moving rapidly. City staff are doing everything we can in order to help the project get in a place where it needs to be with the while protecting the city. And as part of that process, we have, for the lack of a better word, a standard agreement that the state uses for these funds. And as part of that standard agreement, the theory is the state gives the money to the city, and then the city gives the money to Habitat. The city acts as a flow through. And that's how it's been done as practice. But when you actually read the agreement, the city is the co-grantee. And what that means is the city is also assuming the obligations to make sure that those funds are spent properly, and the city is obligated in the event that there is not performance by Habitat or whatever party is receiving the funds. We've seen some instances in other jurisdictions, not with Habitat, not in the city of Yuba City, that has raised some maternal flags with our office as how to best protect the city. One way that can protect the city from a legal perspective is to enter into a separate agreement directly with Habitat that provides some of the protections for the city. Some of those items that we would typically see in such an agreement, and it's up to the council whether you want to do that or not, but one of them would be a defend, hold harmless, and indemnification term or clause. Another one would be that Habitat would name the city as an additional assured for the insurance purposes on the property. So if something happened and somebody were to sue Habitat and the co-grantee, which is us, we would be covered by their insurance coverage as well, so that would not be coming out of the city. The third thing that we could look at as the city is requiring some sort of security from Habitat with regards to it. It's been indicated the grant amount is roughly $24.6 million. There's also a gap funding of about $5 to $6 million as of the last 24 hours. Of course, we won't know till the rest of the stuff comes back from Hilbers. But security could look like a lien on the property, assuming there's any asset or value in there or in properties. It could be some sort of bond. It could be a letter of credit or other sort of security that would be acceptable to the city manager and the city attorney if we didn't have enough time to get this contract back in front of you. Another thing that might be an option to consider, and unfortunately I did not have the opportunity to address this with Habitat today, but one of the things you could do is if Habitat got 95% of the way there, for example, and something catastrophic happened to the business, not that I'm thinking that's going to happen, but attorneys look for the things go wrong, not to go right. That's why we're here. But if something did go wrong, rather than having to refund all that money back to the state, it might be possible to put in a term in the agreement where the city would step in and complete the construction, which would be a less of a cost. And then once the value was added to the property, to be able to get some value back. Obviously, the city wouldn't want to be running the project. We don't have the assets or the resources to do it, but it might provide another option to the city. And so we would need a right of entry in order to do that and a right of authorization. There's also some other steps that the city could take, but what staff is looking for from you tonight is we need to make sure that the application is submitted to the state by July, I believe it's 12th. So we have some very tight deadlines here, but we want to make sure the city's protected at the same time. So there's two things that we're looking for from the city council. One, do you want to enter into some sort of contract with Habitat to provide protection to the city? And two, what sort of terms or general terms do you want to authorize the city manager, subject to legal form of the city attorney, to have in that agreement? The big question that we have from staff's perspective is how much security do you want, if any? And that would be helpful to us to know because we can craft an agreement around that, assuming the city's council is willing to move forward on that. Is there any additional items, Diana, that you can think of that would be of help? I'm available for any questions if you have them.
All right, thank you very much. Anybody care to initiate discussion or have any questions or comments?
Mayor?
Yes, sir.
Well, looking over this agreement on, what is it, Exhibit B, page 2, 3B, it alarms me that in that performance, it has it in capitalized letters. The whole failure to satisfy any one of these performances milestones will constitute a breach of this agreement, entitles the department to mandate the guarantee to return to the department any funds distributed. It's pretty serious. I'm not impugning Habitat's ability to secure, but I would want to completely look at their books and their assets, and I think that would be a very timely thing to do. And we're already in a time constraint to even get this project done. Being in this industry for as long as I had, all the best played plans can go awry really quick of nobody's wrongdoing. So I've got some grave concerns. If somebody was be able to do a performance bond of 100% of the 30 million, that's a pretty steep thing to do, but that would be kind of the direction I would want to go to.
And Council, I forgot to mention that we do have representatives from Habitat here this evening by Zoom or Teams or whatever it is we're using. And they may be able to answer any questions you have, and they may have some additional comments or as well. Thank you.
All right, I'm assuming both Joseph and Scott heard Councilmember Pasquale's comments. Do we have any more? We can just give them all the questions at once.
Actually, through the mayor, what I
Yes.
was going to ask is, before we finish all of our questions, which I like yours, Mike, to start with, is we hear from Joseph and we hear from Scott, and then I believe Hilbers is here as well. They might have some information. Let's get all the information.
Okay, we can, that sounds reasonable, sure. Scott, your picture's up. Go for it.
I'm gonna let Joseph actually speak first.
Okay.
Jump in right after that. And just to add to that, a bond for 30 million for a nonprofit would likely not be feasible, but if we're talking about a bond in the $6 to $8 million range, that would certainly be something that would be viable and that we want to look into. And that really represents the gap that we're talking about, somewhere in that range. And so we would recommend some type of bonding or performance bond related to that amount.
If you're sitting right there, Shannon, can you summarize what Ms. Joseph said? I was not able to hear or understand him.
I'm sorry, I just want to, we didn't quite have a microphone there. I hope the public can. And Joseph, please let me know if I didn't catch everything. Joseph said that they carry a builder's risk policy on their insurance. So if something goes wrong during the construction, there's a fire, there's some sort of damage, that building risk policy covers that. Then once the building is completed, the building risk policy flows over into general insurance for coverage of the project. So, and this is where he didn't say this, but this is where I'm jumping in. That serves to protect whoever is insured, and if the city is an additional insured, to protect us to make sure that the project at least is protected against unforeseen accidents, incidents, arson, meteor hits it, something like that. So that helps reduce the city's risk. The other thing that he brought up was that there are two different things that are going on with regards to the funding. One is the $24.6 million from HCD, but that's not going to be quite enough to finish the project. As been pointed out, there's roughly maybe about $6 million of what we are calling gap funding. And so what Habitat offered was to cover the gap funding with a bond or other security. So what that would do under Habitat's proposal is the state would assure $24.6 million of funding, and then Habitat would carry a bond for the remaining funding of the $6 million or whatever to make sure that the project was fully funded. The other thing that Joseph did mention was that Habitat has $2 million of its own assets into this particular project. They are basically saying they have skin in the game, and that that even though it's not part, and correct me if I'm wrong, Joseph, but even though it's not necessarily part of the gap funding, it is available or will be there to cover the project expenses. So the overall cost of this project, probably around $30 million. There's going to be a gap portion that they don't have funding for. They're offering to provide a bond for that and also make sure there's building insurance on the remainder. Joseph, did I get everything?
Yes, that's correct.
And he confirmed that that was correct. Thank you.
Okay. Comments? Kurt, did you have anything to say, sir?
The only thing that I would add to that.
If you can get to the microphones, make sure we get you. Yeah, we need to get you on the tape. So, right over here, Kurt.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Mayor, Councilman. Hilbers Incorporated carries insurance with an umbrella of $15 million. So during construction, we can name Habitat as additionally insured along with the city and its council members. The only thing else that I might add, not to add costs to the project, and I'm not sure, Joseph, if we included a payment and performance bond in our bid, but if we were to do that, that would ensure that the project gets completed if something happened to Hilbers.
All right. Good. Did you have more? No. Oh, any questions of Mr. Hilbers? No, we're good. Okay. I like the idea. I like what Joseph just said as far as covering the gap, especially. It would be nice if we could get a thing for the entire thing, but I think if, I wonder if there was no gap, if we would be having the conversation about that anyway. We're going to embark upon that endeavor. The gap thing started, this conversation about bonds, and now there's talk potentially about having them cover the whole entire thing. And we also have some question about that's even feasible or possible. I think covering the gap amount and maybe a little bit of a cushion would be, I think, reasonable. And I like, Shannon, your terminology, defend, hold harmless, and indemnify the city. Of course, that's always sounds good to me. If we can put that in there. And then, let's see. And also, if it's applicable, to put the comment in there that the city, should something catastrophic occur, that the city can step in and take over the project, which would include a right of entry on the property. So it gives us a starting place. Be interested in hearing what everyone else says.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir.
So a couple questions, and I'm kind of with you. I heard most of what Joseph said, but not all of it. But a couple points of clarification. Kurt mentioned a $15 million number that they're insured up to, but Habitat didn't. give us a number on what that is. I mean, he said up to, we didn't get a number on that.
Would you like me to ask them?
Please.
Scott or Joseph, do you know what your insurance caps are for insurance?
You know, our base builder's risk is 10, but we can increase it to 15 as well. I think
Okay. The next question, I think he said 10, right?
He did, but I did want to clarify, generally, when one person has 15 and another person has 15, the insurance companies don't allow you to stack them unless you have very particular language in there.
Okay.
Usually they fight over who has to pay is what ends up happening.
Okay.
But what I'm hearing is there may be flexibility on behalf of Habitat in order to also provide insurance.
Okay. And the next question was, the comment was, they had 2 million in skin in the game. What is that?
Joseph?
So we actually have 4.7 million invested. We put the property towards the project, which was a $2 million purchase, and we're going to be doing an additional 2 million that was in cash flow, and then 700,000 in kind. So materials that we were going to provide to the project.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Through the mayor.
Bring it.
This one I struggle with since it's hit our radar, so bear with me. Because it's a tough position that we find ourselves in as a city. And I'll preface this, first of all, Kurt and Joe, I have full confidence in you guys at Hilbers. You guys know your stuff and get it done. So it's not you that I question. I hear everything about the builder's insurance, the general insurance, Kurt, your insurance at Hilbers, that happens if something happens to Hilbers, but Hilbers doesn't bother me. I'm more worried with our state, to be honest, because going back to what Mike said, they're very clear in those contracts. And if we don't meet those deadlines, which by their own standards, the state's already screwed them up to begin with. It was nothing that anybody in this room did. The state screwed it up by taking 6 months. You know, one of the first things is I am not comfortable going, hey, they always give us an extension. We haven't seen one yet. Go ask for the flipping extension up front if we're going to do this. Because we know, as you said, it's a breach of contract. And I know a lot of us in here know contractual law. How can we sign a contract knowing there's not a snowball chance in hell that we're going to make it? Because we're looking at it being completed and done in November. So if we know we're going to need it and it's standard operating procedures, go ask HCD. They've blown it right out of the chutes anyway, the state has. The other stuff doesn't bother me as far as, you know, arson, the catastrophe of a meteor, whatever happens. That's what insurances are for, and they'll step in. But what happens if we don't meet the deadlines and they hold us hard and fast, and we've gone on a wing and a prayer with, well, Habitat said, and you know, whoever else said, you know, they will give us an extension. Just trust us. The city of Yuba City is on the hook for $24.6 million. And our cash reserves as a city isn't much more truly than $30 million. And we're sitting here trying to balance a budget and do everything else that we need to do. But if that was to hit us, and we know exactly how our state is with the budget sucks at the state, they're cutting things. The governor says he's going to, you know, continue funding projects like this, but then he turns around and, you know, out the other side of his mouth, he's cutting things. And that's typically what's going on in Sacramento. So what happens if we get that kind of curveball thrown at us? And that's not what I'm hearing here tonight. You started it off right, Mike. How do we make ourselves whole? And I realize it's a hell of a lot of cost, but the only way we make ourselves whole is not covering the $5 or $6 million. It's indemnifying the city entirely and having a bond that covers the entire $24.6 million, that if the governor comes calling, there's somebody else to pay it other than the residents of our city. That's what bothers me. On the surface, this is a great project. And I'm just gonna go straight at you guys and tell you at Habitat, I really wish you would put all of your effort into this project alone, and get it done. If this is such a great project, put all the resources into it. Because you have a lot of different projects going, but this is the one that's going to be the biggest bang to our community. And, you know, going back to what you had mentioned before, as far as Shannon looking over projects. And you and I had talked, because I asked you the question, have you ever seen the state look at projects and go back? You know, it's, you know, we need to have an independent audit going forward on this, because they look back at all the expenditures and how they were spent. And at 24.6 million, when our reserves are around 30, I am not comfortable with just going, trust me, we've got it right. If we're gonna do it, let's do it clean, let's do it forward, but we gotta protect our citizens. I want this project to go forward. That's why this is the toughest decision. When it's totally built out, it's a great project. Wraparound services, a couple of 100 units is going to provide a space for people that need it. I just can't do it without those assurances. I can't digest and swallow 24.6 million on a trust me. So for me, I've got to take everything that you guys have said to first. We've got to have those, but we've got to have, like Mike said, full indemnification with a performance bond for the full amount, not part, because I appreciate the gesture, but offering us, you know, 6 to 8 million and a performance bond when we're talking, we're still on the hook for 24, doesn't get it. You know, it's like, you know, asking, you know, someone if I can, you know, let's take a $10 million loan out on their house and it's worth, you know, 800,000, has got a loan against it of 600,000, so you got no equity. We've got to be protected. I don't want us to take liens on properties or anything like that, because then now we're into the housing business and we don't build anything, you know? And we've got properties that are leveraged because of prior home keys and everything else. It just doesn't make sense. If you were a lender going into this, that's part of the realm that you've got to look at, is what is the risk. I really want it to go forward, but I've got to have some assurances. So things important to me, independent audit, and I want to see a full indemnification with a performance bond, because we need to protect ourselves and focus on this project and this project alone.
Through the mayor. Sir? It might be helpful to know what that cost is so the council has all the information. And I see Kurt is here. Kurt, I don't know if you have a general, you know, back of the napkin estimate of what it would take to have a 100% performance bond for a $30 million project. 0.75? And because I did not go to medical school and I went to law school, 750,000 on a 30 million? Is that right? 0.075. Oh, 0.075, okay. 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 That's 15 million times 2. That can't be right. Somebody else is going to have to do the calculations. I know what my limitations are, and when it comes to math.
I think we're talking in the 150,000 range, I believe.
225.
I'm glad I'm not the only one that's coming up with different numbers now, so I feel much better about it. 225, the appearance from the engineers and the people who can count appears to be about 225,000 for full coverage, roughly.
So that's for a $30 million bond. Okay. And Scott, you were saying that that's not possible because people won't write them to you, or what was the stumbling block to where you don't think that's even a reality?
from my experience, that would be my concern. We can certainly look into it, but that's a large amount for a nonprofit. And my experience has been that there's limits on performance bonds.
Okay, and so this is 24.6 million, and the city is on the hook for all of it? Not just a half and half thing, because of our role in the application, the municipality.
As the grantee, we are
Grantee.
responsible for 24.6 million, making sure the project is completed, then operating the project consistent with the state requirements.
Okay. Sir, do you have anything to contribute?
I was wondering if Joseph had any comments to the vice mayor's comments before I shared mine.
Yeah, I appreciate that. So I just wanted to note that, just to break up things, it's actually, it's 22 million, a little over 22 million is for the construction component. So the programmatic funding that's included in that wouldn't even be used, so that could just be returned, because that wouldn't even be drawn on. So that would still remain. I think one of the things that may help, and this is, in hearing some of the concerns, we could have a stipulation up to a certain dollar amount that we're able to get a hold of HCD to get the time extension. Because if that happens early in the project, there's not a lot of money that will have been spent into it at that point. Or we could, if we were able to move forward with the standard agreement as part of that, say, while we're working to start construction, we could let them know the timeline's not going to work and seek the extension. So those are possibilities in order to meet the timelines, I think, that we could include, so that we would seek the extension from them. I will say, based upon experience, we did do a Homekey round 2 project, and they're pretty easy to get an extension. I know some projects sometimes go as much as 2 years. I know Scott's experienced that. But as far as getting an extension, we were able to get an extension due to the late signing of the standard agreement, which isn't uncommon. HCD realizes that, they told that they started the contract in February, or the approval in February, but still haven't got us a final approval to move forward on the project. So that in itself is typically a standard reason for HCD to do an extension. So we already have a qualifying extension available to us. However, we still have to apply for it, and I completely understand the concern. However, what we can do is, if we do move forward with the standard agreement, reach out to HCD and request an extension immediately after that goes forward. Because typically through the process, even though it's frustrating and they give these odd time limits, even though I think they know they're not realistic, one of the things that I believe occurs is they have a process, and once you start, they'll start working with you to do that. You'll have a person you can work with to do the extension, all of those different elements. And we were able to acquire that fairly early in our Purpose Place project one. So that's something we can definitely look at doing.
And if I could comment also, just note process-wise, once construction, if construction were to begin, Habitat would be drawing down funds from the city according to the progress of the project. And so you have an asset that's being built while you're expending funds, and you have the ability to monitor the overall progress. And so the plan here is not to give Habitat the full 22 million up front, but to draw that down according to the progress of the overall project.
Mayor, if I could add that to that as well, we have a consultant that we've hired that will be reviewing those pay applications to ensure that, number one, that the expenditures are warranted, and that number two, that we're in compliance with the Homekey funding expenditures. So Scott's correct in terms of it'll be drawn based upon the completion of construction, but in addition, the city has a consultant reviewing them to make sure that we meet all of their requirements.
Okay, so I guess the point there from Scott is if things go belly up, we're still going to have some money in the bank. It's not going to, we're not going to come up with it from scratch if worst case scenario happens.
And technically, there would be an asset attached to.
And the asset. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Mr. Boomgarden.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor. I guess my first question might be to either Kurt or to help Joe is, so I know that you don't have a final figure, but today we've heard anywhere from $4 to $8 million of a gap. Is there any kind of a number that you might be able to share with us between the 24.6 that are in the project, 22 million of which are construction costs, and what you expect the final build-out number is going to be? Thanks, Joe. Didn't mean to point at you, but we want to hear you. I got you.
I'm on? Okay. Joe Pope with Hilbers Incorporated. The current price estimate for the project for phase one is $29.2 million. That is a conservative number with a small amount of contractor contingency within. So we believe comfortably that the project will come in at or below 29.2.
Would that be before any value engineering? Is that in consideration of value engineering of the project?
There's always opportunities to add value engineering. That would be at the pleasure of Habitat. We're always looking at ways to trim back costs. We haven't actively engaged at this point. We just presented the number, I believe, Friday of last week.
Okay, thanks. The Vice Mayor made some extremely valid comments that I had the opportunity to chat on with Scott and Joseph, along with Shannon and Diana today, and the mayor. And many of the things that you brought up were questions that I asked directly, and we had pretty good conversation in regards to this. Number one, I think we are under a time crunch, at least, to get the agreement, and that wasn't imposed by anybody but the state. But I also think that there's an opportunity here for us to continue to move the ball forward, and we chatted about giving opportunity for either the mayor or the city manager as we continue to get more information so that we can make a decision. Should this council say, hey, look, we need a little bit more info before we make a final decision, because I really don't want to walk away from $24.6 million that could help us in our community. I know that there's been a lot of time and energy from a lot of folks, a lot of them in this room, towards this. I think it really boils down to what's reasonable risk, and I'm not a person that can define that for each one of us, but I think that's just one of the things that we're going to have to tussle with as we go forward here. I think that the statement that we hold the funds is huge, because it's not like we're handing over 24.6 that we're putting at risk. We're going to get 24.6, and it gets metered out. And to Scott and Joseph's points, there's an asset there. And I'm assuming, Shannon, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, that as we would have some stake in that asset, would we not?
We could if we had a security interest in the property.
So that would be item number 4 in an agreement. I mean, we talked about how much security or in this bond, we would need to be named as an additional insured, and we need to be in an indemnification agreement as well. So you're also saying now that it would probably be in our best interest to have some sort of security agreement in there.
If the city had an interest in the property, any additional interest is usually additional protection for the city, assuming there is adequate capitalization, brain going, sorry guys, adequate equity, there we go, in the property in order to get some payment out of it. But I found from a practical experience, the more you build on it, especially if you complete it, the more value you have in the property as you build, because there is a value to putting items.
I appreciate that. I too followed up sort of vigorously in regards to the question of why can't we just go for the extension now? We know we're going to need it, at least it sure appears that we are. And the response I got, and thank you, Scott, for that, it was kind of a strategic issue. And I don't know, Scott, if you want to comment on that rather than me regurgitate your words again and maybe miss something, if you wouldn't mind, share with us or share with this group what you shared with us this afternoon.
Yeah, so just as a strategy, it's certainly in my experience with HCD and with the Homekey program to ask for an extension as a project is making progress, and they tend to be fairly flexible with projects that are making progress. But it could be they could see it as problematic statutorily if we were to ask for that extension before we signed the standard agreement. They may just take a very kind of conservative approach and not want to go forward. But if we're asking for it in the midst of the project, our experience is that they've been flexible and they have great interest in making sure projects get completed. So that's just my assessment in my experience with HCD.
Thanks, Scott. That's how I think it was you and Brian had both mentioned that. So again, to me, it's a couple things. Number one, I also am concerned about how the state is and what it is that they're going to do or not do. But I also think history is on our side with the fact that there's plenty of Homekey projects. There have been extensions offered or requested and granted. So the question for me going forward would be, how much security would make people, would make us, feel better about a reasonable amount of risk to see a benefit in our community and not walk away from $24.6 million worth of housing costs. I think there are protections that can be written into the agreement. At least I was assured of the opportunity to at least continue to explore that in the conversations today. I think that the fact that we actually hold the money, so therefore if something did go awry, we have the money. I'm sure we can probably, I would assume we could be earning interest on that money as well.
I know we were looking at placing it in an escrow account. I think that's one of the options that we were looking at, but we were still figuring out exactly how the state disperses it.
I believe I read again today that any interest earned needs to go back into the program itself.
Into the Homekey program.
Yeah. Okay. Well, this local one is fine, but it needs to go back into the project.
So we can earn interest on them. Potentially, we could earn interest on this money, which could help offset any.
Right.
Okay. So
that's actually a requirement, I believe, within Homekey that you have it in an interest-bearing account.
Yeah.
And that any residual is turned back into the project.
Yep.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no, thank you. I know the interest rates aren't fantastic right now, but it isn't zero either. So, well, maybe it's close, right? So anyway, I'm willing to let the legal folks kind of hash everything out. I think really the item here is how much we would want, and if it was possible to somehow work this security into this. And I don't think that part has to be made tonight. I think we could potentially give staff the go-ahead to continue to pursue this project as far as the agreements. I don't think we're looking tonight to say yay or nay on this project, are we?
No, not tonight. However, there is a deadline of July 12th. Yeah. So either you would have to give authority to Diana this evening or to someone this evening, subject to review as to legal form by the city attorney, or you'd have to hold a special meeting. And at the special meeting, you would need a minimum of 3 council members voting yes.
Well, I don't want to speak on behalf of our council members, but I think for 24.6 million, we could probably get 3 people to show up. Maybe not, but
Through the mayor. Are you done?
I think so.
Through the mayor. A couple questions. Does the city currently have the 24.6? We do not. Okay. So I keep hearing about the July 12th deadline. My question is, or what? What happens?
I believe that is the deadline that HCD, the state, requires the grant application to be submitted. And if it's not submitted in the standard agreement signed by everyone, then we've de facto, and Scott, correct me if I'm wrong, we've de facto failed to meet the application process.
Correct. Okay, so the mayor's bus tour was last month, May, June? Okay, so it was May. So at that site, what was expressed by Habitat was that they would break ground on July 1st. And we haven't seen that. And it has nothing to do with whether or not.
It's the state has taken 5 to 6 months just to process the application, is my understanding.
So don't they take that in consideration whether or not we fulfill the July 12th deadline on this?
You know, I've learned that the concept of common sense sometimes does not have a place with certain state regulations, and you're asking a very common sense question, but that's not how the state operates. So we could say that the deadline is July 1st to start, but if the state delays by half a year, that's the state.
Yeah, in the standard agreement, there's a milestone completion date. Project escrow must be closed and capital funds must be fully expended by May 13th, 2025. And that date includes a 7-month extension granted by the department, and that 7 months is to account for the amount of time it takes to process the standard agreement.
Through the mayor.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so I've got another question, but what you just said, and going back to what they said earlier, is we already have a qualifying event for automatic extension, but the date you just said already includes an extension. So they've already got the extension that we automatically.
No, we have to request the extension, but they allow you to request the extension, which would put us at that May 13th, 2025 timeframe.
So even with the extension per their own contract, that puts us into May. And we're looking at completion sometime late 2025, which is beyond May. Okay. Trying to figure out off-ramps and different things here as far as what our options are and how we navigate, again, because this is the state. And I have zero trust in the state. What is our point of no return? And I'm looking into you, Shannon, on this one. Hopefully you know the answer. If we execute the agreement, turn it back in, they fund it. In our separate agreement, could we hold back 100% of the funds until we get some of these assurances in place? We go ahead and do the letter so we don't miss that hard deadline, which is 30 days from the date that was received, which was June 13th. That's how we get July 12th. And say, okay, great. Mayor's going to sign the agreement. We're going to open escrow. We're going to get 24.6 million. It's going to go in an account and sit there. Don't turn in a receipt. Don't ask for a dime until we go get some of these other things in place. The where are we at? The completion bond, if that's needed. The extension, if that's needed. Get all of these things in place, and it's in Habitat's best interest to go quickly on this stuff because we want to get it moving. But do we have the off-ramp? Let's just say that all just falls. It fails, we can't get it, it's not going to happen, whatever. That the 12th of August, we look at the state and go, HCD, we can't make it work because you didn't give us the extension or blah, 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 and we can turn that money right back over to them. So now I've got a path that if this works, doesn't jeopardize our budget nor our taxpayers of the city, but it gives an opportunity for this to go forward. Is that possible?
Just about anything is possible, I've found. I have not looked at that particular circumstance. Technically, under the agreement, the state could force us to go ahead with the project, even if we wanted to return the money, because we've signed an agreement, and they could enforce that agreement. However, as a practical matter, I've rarely seen the state turn down an offer to get money. So that would be something that would have to be an additional conversation with HCD and the funding source to see if that were allowed and how that would be allowed. One of the things for a timing purpose that you might be able to do is July 12th, as you know, a very short period of time. It may not be possible, and it's likely not possible, to get in bonds, be named as additional assured, and do all the stuff that we're talking about. But you can enter into a contract that would require that before the first funds were expended, for example. So you could say, great, we've entered into this agreement, the agreement's approved. Now Habitat, you have 2 months, because we're probably not going to see the money for at least another 2 months. You have 2 months to get the bonds, you have 2 months to get the insurance, you have 2 months to do all the stuff that you need to do in order to get it back to the city as required by the agreement. So that is also an option for giving the council flexibility, yet recognizing there are very short timelines.
Okay, follow up if I could, Shannon, because now technically you would have, if that scenario played out, you're gonna have a breach of a contract to a breach of a contract with the state. How are we protected?
Well, technically what we could do is we're in a breach. If, let's say the city were to breach a contract because the project isn't going forward because they wouldn't do it. At that point, we would have to go back to the state and say, would you like your money back? And again, they technically could enforce a contract if they wanted to. I've never heard of a circumstance of that ever happening when there hasn't been a single stick in the ground and they are made whole with the complete money plus any interest that may have earned in that period of time. But again, I have not looked at the contract or talked to HCD as to that particular scenario. I just didn't expect that. You always come up with such unique solutions. I did not expect that one.
I'm trying to find a way, and back to where I started. This is a great project if we can get it going. I just can't put our citizens at risk. So I can start finding middle ground to, if we've got this off-ramp, if we can, press it forward to start the process of bringing it here, but get this separate contract in, and it's really up to Habitat to go do the legwork and get it done at that point. And if they can't, as long as we've got that off-ramp, we've still got all 24.6 million, because we're not going to expend, that needs to be clearly outlined. No expenditures going out till the contract terms are met. Then we can, I can start moving forward, because I personally have some reassurances that the city's not going to be harmed. And that's really what I'm looking for here. Does that make sense, guys?
And it is a legal potential. We can legally set up an agreement with Habitat in order to do that, and it would provide them with an incentive to promptly perform per the agreement. And if for some reason something came up, it would buy you time and them time to come back to the city council if need be and explain why certain criteria could or could not be met and what alternatives are proposed. Just, again, even though I've never seen the state turn down money, I do want to flag that we do have a contract in place. But in other words, I see some questioning looks. The standard agreement with HCD, when they give us the $24.6 million in order to administer those funds to Habitat, that agreement is still in place. In theory, they could require us to comply even if we wanted to give all the money back. But as a practical matter, I've never seen the state turn down money plus interest to make them whole on it.
Through the mayor.
Go ahead.
Is there any kind of timeline at all when that money's going to come our way?
I'm looking at Diana on this one. I understand that HCD typically takes a couple of months to process.
From when to when?
I think Brian or Joseph could answer this question better, because it's my understanding that even once we sign, it could still take several weeks before the state executes the agreement and the funding would be available.
Okay, so
Brian or Joseph, if you could confirm that.
Yeah, what usually takes place once the standard agreement is signed, it's difficult to know the time frame because the processing of the actual check moves to the controller's office, and the controller's office cuts checks in the order in which they receive it. And so generally we've seen somewhere in the range of, we've seen as early as 2 weeks, we've seen up to 4 to 6 weeks in the past.
Okay, so the time, the clock starts not from the notification of award. It starts from when it's signed on our side, correct?
No, technically the clock has started from the notification of award. That's why we have a case to come back to HCD and say, look, you took 5 months to actually allocate the funds and complete the standard agreement. We want flexibility just because of that reason.
Follow up if I could.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if you go back and ask them for an extension, because I've already heard what the extension does, are we looking at a date past May that you can get an extension for, or are we still looking at May?
It's a
We
second.
are, if we're talking about a 15-month scenario, so we're talking 15 months from now. Yes.
I think you have 12 months to spend all of HCD's funding, and you have 16 months to complete the project. That's the timeline, I believe that's listed, correct?
Yeah, it is about the expenditure of funds. That's what they're looking at.
Yeah, so that's actually that doesn't include any of those extensions. So if we take from February, it's already in end of June 2025 for their regular portion. So any extension we get beyond that would just add to that clock. If they did 6 months, that would give us till the end of 2025, which is what we've had, which we received in the past.
Can I follow up with just one more real quick, Mark?
Let me get this real quick. I cannot foresee a situation, and again, I'm with Shannon, you never know what the state's going to do, and you as well. But if we're moving along and the project's making progress, that at some point they're going to go, oh boy, you missed your deadline. We've already got the money. We've already, I don't see, again, I think if it's a catastrophe or something, we've got insurance covering it. I don't see a problem. I think the problem's getting the thing going. It's not finishing it.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No. I agree and where we're going here. What I'm trying to nail down is what is the drop dead date on this thing? Because we have a lot of dates floating around. And so that needs to really be part of that separate contract to where we're not going to spend a dime of this until we get everything kind of nailed down. And we need to know what that date is, because we have a date from the builder that says we're looking, late 2025. And I'm fine with that if HCD will confirm that our extension is going to be late 2025. But if they come back and go, oh no, it's, August of 2025, then we're back to, can you guys do it by August? So this is where the concern gets, and I've heard too many dates. So that needs to be nailed down. When does the extension start? How do they tag on? Because it's too loosey-goosey. So we need to know kind of, we've got till May. If we get a 6-month extension, does it tag on to May? Or does it go back and somehow start a different clock back in February? We need to know how the extension works. And right now, I'm not hearing any explanation for it.
I think that one of the concerns that has been expressed was that, and again, this is up to us to consider and act on one way or the other, is we potentially jeopardize all of the money if we start asking for an extension now. the strategy that Scott's recommending based upon his experience with these Homekey projects is sign the agreement and then ask for the extension. Because you don't want to give the state the excuse of, oh, these guys are already not going to get something done. It's our intent to get it done. We've got a fantastic contractor. We've got Habitat for Humanity that has a history of getting things done. But and I understand where you're coming from, but I think that at some point, you have to look at Scott Thurman as a subject matter expert who's saying, in my opinion, consider not asking for the extension until after you get the agreement signed. So that would be another piece of all this stuff that we're trying to put in the queue to get done before we disperse any money.
We're lockstep, because that's exactly what I'm talking about, is moving it along, but the separate agreement that we have with them, if it takes you 30 days or 60 days, we've signed the agreement, it's going through escrow, we've got the 24.6. If you've got a qualifying extension, we've already got the money, or, go get the extension and tell us what that date is. And that's what we need to know. But it's not holding it up and asking for it before we sign the agreement, but it's holding it up until you go get the extension before we start paying out of the 24.6. I think that is very reasonable.
Now, Scott, you had mentioned, I think on the phone call earlier, that it's also beneficial. You have a better chance of receiving an extension that I think we all agree that we're going to need. You have a better chance of receiving it once you've actually begun some work and see some progress. Is that correct? Which will require some use of those funds, if I recall correctly.
That's the, in my opinion, the best way forward is to actually make progress and then come to the state with an extension request. Could it be done in the very beginning? If we're going to go that route in the very beginning, we would want to do that as quickly as possible, because we're still, it's definitely going to be the case that we will be on the clock once the standard agreement is signed. We won't have much leverage once that standard agreement is signed. We need to move as quickly as we can moving forward, one way or the other.
Okay.
Through the mayor?
Sure.
I'm sorry, sir.
Go ahead.
Scott, Councilmember Pasquale, you talk about getting extensions. When did these occur? What timeframes were they? Were they 5 years ago, 2 years ago?
We had a project in which we came in the middle of the project, and it was actually a project in a Northern California county where they had $1 million in funding that they needed to fill their gap, and this was a Homekey project. And at that time, I believe they were a couple of years behind schedule. It's certainly not something HCD wants to see, but they continue to work with them. We had a unique situation, and this was in Yolo County, where we had the 60 units of housing built, but it took a while to get the community center built, which extended the project, and HCD in that circumstance was willing to give an extension as well.
Okay. My question was, when did this occur? How many years ago did this occur in these municipalities you just spoken of?
The project, the first project I spoke of, that is actually an ongoing situation. It's a current one. I will share that was with Homekey round number 1. That was the original granting of that project.
And we're in 3 now?
We're in 3 at this point. And so that project, I believe, still needs to complete construction, but they've identified their gap. We were able to raise funds to identify the gap in funding, and so they are on the road to completion. And so, that's my experience, is that HCD drives towards the completion if they see a pathway.
So HCD granted an extension to this project? How many times?
Multiple times. I'm not quite sure how many extensions were granted, because you generally set the date of your extension, and then if you don't meet that, you set another date. And so I would say, I know it was multiple times that this project received an extension for.
There would be my point, gentlemen. It's construction. I don't see putting the city in the Homekey or their habitat and such in a $24 million three-wheel car and then trying to navigate it down the highway. Thank you.
Through the mayor.
Yep.
If I may, I have one more question. Because what you mentioned was, and talking about when you apply for the extension is you basically want to see skin in the game that you've had some expenditures. You've actually already had expenditures because I know Hilbers has been working on this. You guys don't work for free, do you? Because I got some projects for you if you do. So you've already got expenditures that can be submitted for payment as the project goes. So back to the point I'm trying to make, there's no reason to wait until September or December to ask for an extension because you're already out expenditures with skin in this game. If we're going to take a chance on this project, and I agree with Mark, if we can bring 24 million home, let's bring it home because we need it. And this is a good project. I've said it multiple times. But I'm not going to subject our residents to undue risk. And so, that just, I'm back to where we're at. You've got expenditures, so we got to have that extension firing out once we enter into it.
My response to that would be that I think it's what HCD wants to see is not so much expenditures, but they want to see construction progress. And I mean, that's been my experience, is that they see that construction progress. We do have expenditures to date. We do have, the full set of architectural plans, of course, and we're making progress to the city. But, the further we get down the road, the more amenable. And I just want to be clear. I'm not saying that we shouldn't take the approach of asking for an extension from the get-go. I'm just saying that my experience has been that the further you're down the road, the more amenable against the state is to an extension. We could be very successful. We could be successful in asking for an extension next week. But safer down the road. And that's really up to the council.
Through the council, may I ask a question if you don't mind?
Yeah.
Thank you. Scott, when you say down the road and performance, construction performance, how much are you talking about? 5%, 10%, 20% completion?
If I just had to give my opinion on this, I would say that significant progress on the infrastructure, and where it's close to completion, and I'm talking about, and not the vertical, but just the actual ground infrastructure.
So in simple terms, because, I understand when sticks go up, when you say ground infrastructure and significant, are you saying 90% of streets, roads, sidewalks put in, or what are you talking about?
Probably 25% of the full project, I would estimate.
Thank you.
Okay, so what's the minimum that you need today to move this thing forward?
Once we're done with public comment, we will be looking for direction from the city council, and we can get a thumbs up or thumbs down. First of all, do you want us to enter into an agreement? And if the answer to that is yes, the next question is, do you want to give us authority now, or do you want us to try to bring it back at a special meeting? And assuming that you want to give us authority now or bring it back to a special meeting, our third thing we're going to be asking you is what terms do you want in it? And if I could suggest, and that is what I call the bucket proposal, and that's where everybody goes down each one. Do we want indemnifications? If we have three nods, it goes into the bucket. And then once you're done at the very end, then you have an up and down vote on what's in the bucket or container or basket. And then that way it's, because we have a lot of moving parts here, that way we can probably get to some resolution quickly. That'd be helpful for staff.
Be helpful for me too. Been up here trying to figure out how we're going to do this as cleanly as possible. There is a lot of stuff going on. I know that the intent is to get us moving forward here. Now, we had talked about earlier in this phone call, it was kind of a hybridized version. We approved something today, and then we have a sideline with our city manager, or perhaps it was me, I can't remember what we decided, with some other details with Habitat, but at least it got something moving forward for the project. Okay, is that what you're talking about today, what it looks like?
Yes, because in order to bring a contract back to the city council, like say you wanted to have a special meeting, for example, we would need to know what you want in that contract, at least in broad terms.
Okay.
And if you're fine in giving the city manager authority, so you don't have to come back for a special meeting and get your 3 votes and everything else, and of course, we can report out at the next meeting exactly what the contract was. And we can always amend it if we need to on the back end. But if you want to give the city manager authority, it just means you don't have to have a special meeting, and you can move a little bit more quickly. Sorry, Mary. And with that, Mayor, I would hope that for directional purposes, that we could also have direction. You've already been authorized by the city council to sign the agreement with HCD, that with the direction tonight would be direction to also you as mayor to hold off on signing that until we get the agreement in place or whatever it is you decide.
The additional nuggets that we're going to put in this bucket. So, okay.
Exactly.
And we can do that. Okay. So I think unless there's other comment, I'll ask for public comment, if any. I don't see any. So we could go ahead and if we're ready, discuss the options as far as what we want to have in the agreement.
So through the mayor, there's a lot of moving parts here.
Yes.
Could I suggest the nods or the thumbs up approach? And that is basically to the first question, if you don't mind me.
Yeah, go ahead.
Do you want to have a separate contract with Habitat with protection, terms for protection for the city? Yes. Or no? Okay, I'm seeing 5 nods on that. Second of all, do you want to give authority to your city manager, subject to legal approvals to form, based on any terms that you have tonight, to enter into a contract with Habitat and then return with a report at the next meeting so that we can make the July 12th meeting? Or do you want to have a special meeting? And I'm going to ask the first question, authority for the city manager. If I could see thumbs up and nods, I see 1, 2, 3, 4, with Councilmember Pasquale saying no. So what we're looking for is that you will be granting authority to the city manager to enter into a contract subject to review as the legal form and returning with a report at the next meeting. So now let's talk about this basket. What are we going to toss in the basket? First thing, a requirement to defend, hold harmless, and indemnify the city. Do I have nods on that? I have 5 nods. Okay. Second, the city be named as an additional insured on insurance. Do I see nods? Just as clarification, do you want a particular amount or just the 15 million or whatever they have now? So if you want what they have now, nod your head. I'm not seeing that.
Can you repeat that question?
So for the insurance amounts, you can require how much insurance that they have. They suggested 15 million. I believe Hilbers has 15 million with regards to, they said they'd name us as additional insured on theirs. But this would be for Habitat to have insurance. And the amount that Habitat offered was 15 million. And I see that Councilmember Shaw has a question.
No, they said I'm sorry, Shannon, they said their current limits on their insurance, I believe, was only 10, but they could increase to 15. So I want to be clear what that amount is.
Yes, so do you want do I see thumbs up for 10 million? I'm sorry, for 10? I don't see any thumbs up. Do I see 3 thumbs up for 15? I see 1, 2, 3. So we'll throw 15 million into the pot as the general insurance minimums. I'm assuming.
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Did you just count me as one that's thumbs up?
No, I did not. I did Councilmember Kirchner, the mayor, and I believe it was Councilmember Baumgarten were the 3. I'm assuming, City Council, we want to require them to have builder's risk policy. Is there a thumbs up on that? Okay, I'm seeing 5 nods on that. With regards to security, this is the big question. So do you think we should start with the gap first? Let's start with the gap first. That's that $5 or $6 million gap. Does the city council want them to have bonding for the $5 or $6 million gap?
I have a quick question, and it was based on Joe Pope's. So the 24.6 million, where we're at, 2 million, and this is for Joseph Hale, 2 million of that is operational costs. Is that correct, Joseph? So we're at 22, and right now we're looking at 29. So really the number looks to be about $7 million, rough, give or take, is the gap. Is my math right? I'm not a math major either, Shannon.
Don't look at me for math. So whatever that gap is, let's call it $7 million. Anything that is not covered by actual construction costs, it would be what we would call the rest or the gap. For those of you who want security coverage in the form of a bond for the gap, could I see nods or thumbs up? I see 1, 2, 3, 4. Councilmember Pasquale is not giving a thumbs up. So we will get a bond for the gap.
Excuse me, Shannon,
Yes, sir.
are you about to go to the amount of the gap next, or are you kind of done with that? Because that's still a major point, because to Mark's point, we're 7 million short in the gap, and that's at current bids, and God knows what's going to happen in California in the next 8 months. That 7 could become 9. Does that mean, so what is that number going to be?
That number is going to be the cost of the project minus the grant funding that actually goes to construction. And that remainder is going to be the gap.
And that's the number we're going to get from you guys, correct?
It should come from Hilbers once the bids come in and they're able to do it, and they may go through the.
Okay.
Do we just say the gap in general, or should we say give a number up to a certain amount? Or how do we do, what's the typical on that?
We could do a number, or we could just say the gap.
Gap period. If we're able to do that, let's just do that.
Numbers and a minimum, so you could say up to the gap, not less than $7 million.
Oh, okay.
And then that way, you could do it that way.
Okay. I like the 10 number myself, but.
I was just going to suggest that maybe Mr. Hilbers or Mr. Pope might comment to us as subject matter experts an inflationary factor. I mean, I don't know what that is in your business, and I know I'm not going to hold you to it, and I think I see Kurt smiling over there. But, I mean, is there something that we should be considering when we're talking about this?
Joe, you can nod if I'm on the right track. There we go. We have a permit. We are ready to break ground. So if we break ground by September, our contract price is good. And so, like Joe mentioned, we're conservative at the 29. So now if we don't break ground till January, we might have a different story.
That's helpful. Thank you, Kurt.
So what I've heard from the city council on the gap, and please correct me if I'm wrong, is to get bond coverage on the gap, not less than $7 million. Are there at least 3 nods on that? I see 1, I see 2, I see 3, I see 4. Okay.
So
now let's talk about other security types, because I'm just going to go through the types of security. Do you want bonding for the non-gap portion of the construction, the roughly $22 million? So that comes at a cost. So I'm going to be looking for nods or 3 thumbs up on that.
So the question is, do we want it as in, is it required for us to vote yes to move the entire thing forward, or is it something we're good either way?
You're giving me direction. And you're giving staff. So do you want me, when I go back to Habitat, to say this agreement must have performance bond coverage for the full remaining portion of $24 million?
Must have, okay, thank you.
That's a must-have, and there will be a cost associated with that. I think we estimated it as, again, not doing math, 225, as a rough back of the napkin, so about $250,000, just under it. So do 3 members of the city council or more want to have performance bond coverage for the full remaining $24 million or so? I see Councilmember Shaw nodding yes. I see Councilmember Pasquale. Is there anyone else? So as it stands now, we will not be putting that in for the full amount. Now let's talk about security liens, like security as a lien on the property. Does the city council want to put some sort of lien on the property for the remaining portion? May not be equity, but put some sort of lien on it with authorization to the city manager to release that lien once construction is completed and the funds are expended. I see a question?
Question.
Yes.
Would this be something similar like a mechanics lien, so that once it's done, we just, not like a monetary lien, it's like a mechanics lien, correct?
It's almost like maybe like a deed of trust. We still have to figure out how that would work, but I'm just looking, do you want us to put some sort of security interest on the property with the understanding that it will be for the full amount, but we're going to be in last place? In other words, we're going to be the junior lien holder. And I'd also suggest granting Diana, your city manager, authority to move our position if they need to comply with some sort of funding or loan to cover the gap. And then once everything is completed, to be able to release that. Do it.
I have a follow-up question.
And that assumes that the grant allows us to transfer liens. If the grant does not allow any sort of security lien, then we obviously won't put that in. And did you have a question?
Yes, sir. If we advanced our position and we're in fact the deed owner, then is that going to subject that property to the Surplus Land Act?
No, it is a contractual. We are not, it won't be until there would be a failure to perform, we'd foreclose on the lien, we'd satisfy all the prior lien holders, and then become owners of that property and fee title. And that will be a very long, and only then, after we actually own the property, would we be subject to the Surplus Land Act.
Through the mayor?
Yes, sir.
The way I understand mechanics lien in the state of California is if you supply services or materials. We are doing neither. So I don't think a mechanics lien applies in this instance.
It does not, because we're not providing the services or materials, but we could do some sort of deed of trust or a similar sort of.
So there's another way of leaning, but then we would be in first position because there's no one, we're not behind the materials and labor people. Am I
Well,
right?
we would be behind the labor materials people unless you're going a different direction. It's all in your direction. Usually you have priority, first come, first serve, and you stand in line. And then whoever gets, the assets in there are paid first. So if you're the last guy and you foreclose, you have to make sure everybody in front of you that's in front of you in the line gets paid from the assets of that property. So we may be required to bump our position in order to satisfy HCD requirements for what's on the property and certain covenants to make sure that they're not wiped out. I don't know what the council thinks about for mechanics liens, whether or not you want to say, yes, we want all the mechanics liens junior to us, or you'd be happy to have mechanics liens on the property because you know that there's actually been stuff going in, things are actually being done and we have performance bonds, so we'd be fine. Okay, thank you. So let me back up a little bit. First of all, is there an interest for a security interest in the property? Just thumbs up, thumbs down. I see 1 nod, 2 nods, 3 nods, 4 nods, 5 nods. Okay. The nature of that security interest, do you want us to, assuming that it complies with HCD, do you want to grant authority for Diana to release it when construction is done? Okay, so we can get that in the agreement. Great. with regards to financing, getting bridge loans, getting these other sorts of loans? Do you want to grant Diana the right to subordinate the lien? In other words, move back in the line? The reason why I ask is if they need a loan to get the last $5 or $6 million to complete the project, usually lenders won't give them money unless the city moves back behind the lender. So this would be basically saying, hey, if you need financing for your property, we're willing to let the financing go forward to allow the construction to complete. Do I see 3 thumbs up on that? I see 1, I see 2, I see 3, I see 4. I see some iffy, puzzled looks, but I think we have enough.
Questions?
Yeah, a lot of those.
Questions for you, Shannon. I'm going to kind of take a step back because I don't know, where does prevailing wage fall into this job? Does Habitat have to pay prevailing wage because of where the fund's coming from?
Yes.
Okay, then that answers my question because I didn't know if us being on title would automatically kick that in, and I didn't want to mess up the budget. So my iffy, not a problem in subordinating, but it's no larger than the gap because, you know, that's really the only lending that they should be looking at is the gap amount. Because what I don't want them to do is go out and take a $20 million loan on this thing at some point and we have to come second to it and it come off the rail. So it's no more than the gap amount.
And can I get 3 thumbs up on that one as well? It basically says, okay, I've got my 3. So to be clear, a bond for the gap amount, not to be less than $7 million, security interest or lien on the property, and the subordination grant, the city manager has subordination power up to the gap amount to allow for subordination and for HCD, any requirements to comply with HCD, assuming HCD allows any sort of restrictions on the property. So before I move on to the next item, is there any more security interests that you're looking for the city council members? Any other types of security? I don't see anything. Thumbs up, thumbs down. In the event that something catastrophic happens to Habitat, which I hope they don't, do we want to request a right of entry and a right to complete the project if necessary? I see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nods on that one. So that is okay. And then there are certain restrictions in the primary agreement about the ability to assign the project to another entity. Do you want to also make sure we have, in other words, if Habitat were to sell or to transfer the property to somebody else to build it? I know you have a working relationship with Habitat. Do you want to also ask for something in the agreement that says, hey, if you're going to assign it to someone else, you need to get city's reasonable approval and they need to agree to the terms of this agreement as well? Let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 nods. And then Hilber's also offered to put, and I'm sorry, we have to thank you for your patience for going through contract terms. We're on very tight deadlines. That's why we're doing this way. Hilber's also offered to name us as additional insured on their contract. Is there a thumbs up for that? Diana, is there anything else, or Ben, who's been so patient? If not, is there any other council member who has something?
So I'm not hearing how we addressed Vice Mayor Shaw's comment about holding off on expenditures until the agreement's in place.
Thank you. So do you want us to add a term that says that the city will not be letting the expenditures go until the insurance is provided, the bond is provided, the lien or equivalent document is recorded and provided on the property? You say extension. Oh, and the extension. Maybe we could hold the extension because I want to come back to that. That's a good point. So just on the other items, in other words, we enter into the contract, they have a certain period of time, but they don't get any funds distributed from the city until they provide the insurance, do the bonds, and do the liens. Do I see 1 thumbs up? 2. Mayor, are you fine with that? No. I see 3, 4. So 4 thumbs up. And let me...
Shannon, to your point, I'm still back at, the extension has to factor into that. It doesn't mean it has to be granted, but we're not going to sit on our hands till December to apply for it.
Okay.
So
So that brings me up to the extension. There's 2 or 3 different ways that we can approach this. I'll just name 2 of them right now. If you guys want to go add another one, perfectly fine too. The first one is to say, promptly apply for an extension before we give you any money. And here's where the extension has to be. In other words, now or sooner than now. Maybe that's a bad way of putting it. So it would be promptly apply for an extension after the application is received. They've processed it. We get the money or starting to get the money. And then we say, now you need to apply for an extension. That's option 1. Option 2 is they apply for an extension when they've reached a certain amount of construction. I think they mentioned 25% of project. So do I have 3 nods on council?
question, and this will be probably for Joe or Kurt, but Joe, how long is it going to take Hilbers to reach 25% of construction, which is going to be the infrastructure? Because I know you guys have been ready to run, but how long is that going to take?
I would say probably 3 months into construction, possibly 4 at the most. Going off of roughly $1 million a month, yeah, that'd be my 3 months.
So option 1 is to do it, submit the application, and then when it comes back in, promptly do it. Option 2 is to wait for the 25%. Or 3 months. Option 1, do I have 3 thumbs up for doing it promptly? I do not. 1, 2. Okay, I see 2. Okay, for option number 2, that is 25%. I see 1 thumb, I see 2, I see 3 thumbs now. So, I'm really going to have to go back over the record on this one for sure. But are there any other options that the city council wanted to discuss or propose? If not, before you take a final vote on this, if you don't mind, I'd like to ask Habitat. Joseph and Scott, do you see any major red flags with any of those items? Or do you think these are doable? Don't jump in all at once.
I think I would say that they're going to be challenging, but I think we'll make every attempt. Can you clarify the bonding component? That's the only part that I may have concern about.
The bonding component would be for the gap portion, that a bond would be put into place, that the project would be completed. The value of the bond would be a minimum of $7 million, but could be up to whatever that gap amount is once Hilbers has the final bids and makes a determination and there's any value added and corrections or modifications.
Yeah, I'd say it's going to be a challenge, but I think Joseph, if I can speak first, I think we're up for the challenge within this scenario.
Yeah, we're going to reach out and request what those costs on this bond. But I definitely think, I was looking at different rates. It's typically, around 1% or less. So hopefully we can get that done quickly. I did want to clarify that the money wouldn't be spent until so once the standard agreement signed, we would do that bond and then hopefully have it done within the 3 weeks. It's just a matter of we're kind of at the mercy sometimes of an institution or a company that wants to give it. So they could say, hey, the timeline's 4 to 6 weeks, but our worry is only that we would slow down the project. If they would allow the performance bond to be part of the 25%, that would be great, just because our current bonding covers us up until then, and that way it gives us at least 4 to 6 weeks. So we don't get the standard agreement back and delay Hilber's starting the project for a month or so. That would be my only thing with that. I would just worry that they may want financial various things that take a little time.
And just so you know, Joseph, I don't know if the council caught that and wanted to do a different bonding mechanism. The council, the motion, the way it stands now, or the way that it's being proposed now, is that there is a built-in timeline for you. The agreement's put into place, and then you would have an opportunity to provide your bonding and financials during HCD processing of your application and funding the application. It's just the city wouldn't be dispensing any funds until you provided bonding. So, City Council, assuming that there's nothing else, and again, I appreciate your patience, let me repeat everything to make sure I've got it. Diana, did you want to say something?
So Ben had one more thing to cover.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and this is the logistics with the contractors and the developer, is just, one of the key things that I'm having a hard time is just, there's the bond, the security that you have, but the actual funding, and so I know there's a lot of work, and I know there's a lot of, the contractor wants to know that money's in place and real before you move forward, and that affects the timeline. So I don't know if that's addressed through the bond, or if that's a separate item that says, hey, we need that $7 million either verified through a loan or it's verified in some sort of escrow account, or how's that money realized, and does that need to be in the contract? Yeah, I don't know, Hilbert's, maybe you guys, or Joseph, if there's a way to answer that, or if there's a way we could identify that in the contract.
And I just want to make sure that I fully understand, and that is that obviously if you're a construction worker, you don't start construction until there's money actually funded. That's your concern.
Yep.
And you want to make sure that's addressed.
Yeah, the bond's kind of almost that insurance, right? It's the 1% that is going to be delivered, but is the money in the bank to build it?
Well, and just to be clear, there wouldn't be any money released until the bond is provided. So once the bond was provided, then all the funds would become available per the HCD agreement.
The 22.
Right.
Not the gap.
Not the gap.
I would like to weigh in on that. I know where you're going with this, Ben. A bond, or that performance bond, is there to supplement if you can't make up to the construction. It's not a guarantee that that money is there to use.
That's correct. Performance bonds basically say the surety would step in and perform the work up to a certain dollar amount.
Yeah, I guess if it's written that way, and so everybody's secure, if it's leveraged off existing properties, that surety would step in for that remainder. I guess I just don't know quite how the payments get made to the contractor.
I'm following you all the way through the mayor, if I may. And but you said triggered it. We'll have our money from HCD that can be doled out, but it brings up a point that we probably missed that needs to be a part of this separate agreement with Habitat, the gap funding. What is going to be their date that they have to have those funds in place so that these guys know that they're going to get paid? So, that's kind of a secondary issue, is that when the project is 60% complete, 75% complete, because it's just getting through that last mile that they have to. But I think that probably needs to be a part of the secondary so that at the end of it, they're not looking back at us going, we need $7 million.
Through the mayor, may I ask Habitat some questions? Thank you so much, Mayor Pro Tem Shaw, or Vice Mayor. Dave, whoever you are. It's late at night. I can't do math. We're trying to get through here. Scott and Joseph, when do you anticipate having financing for the gap remainder, and how long do you think that's going to take?
We're actually applying for funding through Tri-County Bank as we speak to cover the gap funding. We also work with loans through the Yuba City Economic Development Department. So there's a few that we're looking at. However, it could be 2 months, it could be a little longer. It just depends on the amounts. We are also looking at funding some other grant opportunities that could go into it. Another element we have in place that we're going to be applying towards it is some general funds that are going to be coming from habitat programs that we'll be bringing in. So there's three different areas. Giving a timeline, I think well before we spend the $24 million, we'll have that in place. But I wouldn't want it to hold up moving forward with the, any project elements, like it has to be done to get funding released, because that could stall some things. But we could obviously put something in place that before the contract end date or the extension date or something to that effect, that we would have that funding in place.
Thank you so much. I can see why the council would be concerned about the gap funding as to how that's going to be financed. Traditionally, that is not something a council is involved in. We rely on the applicant to make that gap funding. However, it is a legal option to put in, if agreed to by all the parties, certain performance criteria, such as, just tossing out a number, 50% construction, do you have the remainder for the gap funding? I don't know if the council would be interested in that, or whether or not it would even be possible. I'm looking at Scott and Joseph, 50%, saying, hey, at 50%, you got to have the remainder of the funding to finish out the project. Is that something that's reasonable in your mind, something that you guys be able to live with?
Yeah.
I think at 50% at that stage, having the remainder of the funding, I think that would be a fair scenario, Joseph.
Yeah, at 50% of the development, that would be good.
Through the mayor. Shannon, or what, though?
That's when
you're going to put a condition in there. What's the penalty for non-performance?
Fair enough. What it does is it brings it back to the city council to discuss your various options. As a practical matter, you could say you're in violation of the contract, but do you really want to go after Habitat when they're trying to get funding? And I think the answer to that is no. I'm just guessing that it's no. It does, however, provide an opportunity for the city council to see a performance criteria or waypoint to make sure that performance is being done under the agreement. But again, traditionally, I haven't seen councils involved in how the gap funding is being filled unless the council is the one being asked to fill the gap.
I guess my concern would be for us is that there's a sense of urgency in getting the funding. If that served that purpose, then I think I would be in support of it. But I don't, again, I don't want to be, as you mentioned, banging on Habitat. I don't know what the hammer would be, but I think somehow or another, if we could craft the language, and I'm not here to craft that language, of saying, hey, look, you got to have this by then, otherwise we got a problem. I don't know how to move forward with that, but that seems reasonable to me.
And frankly, I don't know how to do it with an enforceable mechanism with what we have now. We could have a report, but and it would be a breach of the contract, but as a practical matter, it would just be to let you know whether or not they're performing and they have enough funding to complete the project.
See, this is my concern about Habitat, and it goes back and it goes forward as well, is we do have a working relationship with Habitat. We have one with Scott as well. But it doesn't mean that those players are going to be there forever. And so, matter of fact, they probably, for the duration of this, let's hope so that they are. But, you can put a performance thing in there, but without any teeth, it's just ink on paper. I don't get it.
And frankly, it's probably ink on paper, but would allow you to at least look at the contract if you wanted. It's up to you. Diana?
In thinking about this, I think the bigger question is between Hilbers and Habitat in terms of Hilbers going to sign a contract. They're going to sign a contract where they're going to be contractually related. Hilbers is going to be relying on them to pay it. In terms of our involvement in this, if they've worked it out and we have the bond for that gap funding, if it falls short, that's really all we should be concerned about.
Through the mayor, it's what we get when we start throwing spaghetti against the wall. We start figuring out how it all comes down. But that was, as Mark was talking, that's it. I wasn't trying to say we're going to tell them how to get their funding and stuff. That was never it. That's up to them. the main thing I wanted was because we're going to be on a lien holder on that property. If for some reason they don't come through, I don't want these gentlemen coming to us going, okay, we need our $7 million to finish the project. Because, I mean, you guys are nice guys. You just do it anyway, right? No, I mean, that was my only thing. And then I started thinking, we've got the indemnification clause previous. We can make sure that's ironclad. But if that did hit to like what Mark was saying, if they run out of money, these guys aren't going to work for free. The project misses its deadlines. The bond pulls in and allows the project to be finished. So never mind my scroll trail that I just sent us down. So
It's good to explore all options, and I appreciate the council's flexibility at late at night trying to run this down in order to accommodate a state deadline. So thank you very much.
Through the mayor. Shannon, HCD, what if they see this side contract over here and they don't accept that?
We would come back to the city council. But as a practical matter, I have rarely seen them get involved, if ever. I don't think I've seen any time when they've got involved in a third-party contract, as long as that contract is expressed that the prime agreement applies. So HCD's agreement, you can't contradict HCD's agreement. So as long as you're in compliance with HCD's agreement, they don't care really if you have a requirement to paint your shoes blue every morning. They just worried about the checking the boxes.
Thank you.
So just, I realize we're briefly short one council member, but if I could go over the list to make sure that I've got everything. City Council wants us to enter into an agreement. They're authorizing the city manager, subject to approval of some material, late at night, giving the city manager authorization to enter into a contract on behalf of the city, subject to a review as to legal form by the city attorney, to enter into the agreement that would be to, one, require Habitat to defend, hold harmless, and indemnify the city. Two, require the city to be named as an additional insured, both on Habitat's and on Hilber's insurance. Three, to provide security in the form of a bond for the gap payment, not less than $7 million, and also a security lien for the, I can't read my writing. Was that security lien, Diana, for the full amount or just for the gap amount? It was for the full amount, wasn't it? It's the remaining $22 million, I think is what it was for. And then the lien on the property would be for the $22 million. The bond would be for the gap amount. Okay, I'm seeing enough nods here. That's good. Authorize the city manager to be able to subordinate for the gap amount and as required by HCD. And that a security lien, of course, would be subject to if allowed by HCD. If for some reason HCD didn't allow it, we'd be coming back to the city council. No assignment of the project or selling the project to another entity without some sort of agreement to assign the assignment from the city. We would not be releasing any funds. In other words, we'd be entering into the agreement now before July 12th, not be releasing any funds until the criteria for the bonds, the liens, and everything else is met. And the mayor was requested to hold off signing until we can get the agreement in place with Habitat. When we say signing, we mean the standard agreement with HCD. Diana, did I miss anything on your list?
The only thing I didn't hear you say is that the insurance amount will be $15 million.
Yes, the insurance amount will be $15 million. City Council, that is what is in your basket. So if you would like to have a motion to approve all those items in a second, hopefully we can wrap this item up.
Through the mayor.
Yes, sir.
Move to approve the basket.
second.
First and second to approve the basket. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
And one no. So 4-1 in favor. Thank you. Thank you very much, Shannon. That was I think, one of the most complicated, if not the most, that I can remember. So thank you for walking us through that. I appreciate it. It's very, very important that we do that. Scott and Joseph, thank you very much as well. And Ben, of course.
Mr. Moody.
All right, so we'll move on to future agenda items. Anybody have anything to bring up for the future? Nothing? All right, reports and communications, beginning with the city manager's report.
All right, I'm going to be quick. So City Hall is closed July 4th and 5th. The July 16th council meeting, an item will come forward for council to decide on the potential revenue measure, including ballot language. And then we have 2 upcoming ribbon cuttings, July 10th at City Cafe at 5:30, and July 13th, which is a Saturday at noon, at Rim's Boba Rolls, which is over in the Featherdown Shopping Center. So thank you.
Oh, very good, thank you. Councilmember Baumgarten.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Attended the Regional Housing Authority, nothing of great note to report there. SACOG had their visitation, I'm going to leave that to you. I attended the fair in the revenue measure informational booth with Chief Baker and our Human Resources Director. Children's and Families Commission, a couple things. One is we've reinstituted the Life Fest giveaway down at the river. There's some other locations as well. It's being well received, and they're not losing them like they have in the past. We're being taken. And I would also report that Michelle Blake just received her doctorate from USC. Attended a press conference in support of Marysville and their Marysville Hotel issue that is, if you listen to them, is quite complex and not necessarily near resolution. So anything that we can do to support Marysville, and I know we're taking on a load of their traffic already, but we should consider trying to do. Thank you. And everybody please have a safe and sane 4th of July. I notice already lots of the things that go up in the air that shouldn't, so be careful and report those.
All right, very good. Councilmember Kirchner.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll keep this brief. Yuba City Transit meeting, again, really expressed the appreciation for the organization to pivot as they did in time of an emergency, as such as they've seen over there with the hotel. The big thing on the agenda was we approved the 5-year MTIP program of projects and the 2050 capital improvement plan that was proposed. In addition to that, I did attend the fair with the city manager and Councilmember Pasquale, getting out the message for the proposed revenue measure. And that concludes my reports.
Thank you, Councilmember Pasquale.
Thank you, Mayor. Attended the fair booth Thursday and Friday. It was remarkable the amount of people that didn't stop. I was amazed at that. That's just, yeah, can't control that. SASA meeting, they are getting very close to funding their barn through donations, which was great to hear. Went to revenue at the Realtors of Yuba City. Went to Hillcrest for the chamber, and Councilmember Kirchner and myself were given the opportunity to pitch the revenue. And also that same day, I went over to the senior center and participated in the revenue measure. And with that, I conclude my report.
Vice Mayor.
I'll keep it brief. I was at the fair with Ms. Langley and Mr. Moody on Sunday, and I think we had less people than you did. It probably stopped on Sunday. It was hot. Nobody wanted. Been in meetings over the upcoming Sikh Festival. I'll let the mayor report out on that. And outside of that, most of my time has been spent at UC Davis Veterinary Hospital the last couple of weeks. So that's where I've been tied up.
Good stuff. All right. Yeah, I attended the aforementioned shop talk at Happy Viking that the city put on. Did a good presentation on informing the public on the potentially proposed revenue measure. It was a good turnout, and as Ashley said, it was a nice mix of folks that came and had some good questions. SACOG, we were able to host our meeting, our June meeting here in Yuba City. A lot of discussion about the housing needs assumptions and long-range blueprint and some opinions, varying opinions on that, not unlike tonight where we're voting on one thing, but with the intention of potentially amending it right after we voted it in. So I won't bore you with the details, but it went on a long time. But we do have that long-range, what they call the blueprint, in place. They also put together a mobility hub. Y'all may have read about that in the paper, where they put up a mock or kind of a stand-up thing of so-called mobility hub where you folks can go, you can charge your car, you can access maybe bike share, car share, electric scooters, access public transit in one place and kind of a hangout area that's safe with other amenities. So it was a nice thing that they put up there. They put a lot of work into it and work really turned out well. I too worked fair with Councilmember Pasquale and our fire chief. We also did not have, probably due to the heat, a lot of people stopped by, but we did talk to a few, and they were very productive conversations. Also attended the press conference supporting the city of Marysville regarding the goings-on to resolve the hotel issue. They do have looking at uphill battle with that, so I agree that anything we can do, we should do to help that city. It's kind of a mess, and I don't know what the timeline is, but it's going to be a long time. I was also invited to and did attend the Juneteenth celebration at the Sutter County Library. It was fairly well attended, a lot of booths, information booths, a lot of good speaker. Lieutenant Colonel Brian Williams, who's stationed out at Beale, gave a really good talk, motivational speech, and explained the significance of Juneteenth and how it has affected our country. It was a pleasure to be a part of that. Councilmember Pasquale said we both attended the SASA meeting. We got the budget approved and got a little update from Megan. Was due a 93Q presentation, our appearance on the radio with Chief of Police Baker. We had a good conversation with Fish over there, general stuff, plus we also got an opportunity to educate their listeners about the potentially upcoming revenue measure that we may see on the ballot soon. I had an opportunity with SACOG to go out to Denver for 3 days, 2.5 days, where we toured several housing development areas. Also got a long presentation about their transit, primarily bus service in the area. They showed us examples how they took a dilapidated shopping mall, converted it into city blocks, just created city streets and created a purpose-built community on this. It was a large mall, 100 acres. They're in the Denver area, and they've pointed out a few things of cost saving when you can build things ahead of time, even though the buildings might look different, or you have retail here and gas stations there and homes over here and apartments over here. But if you do it all at the same time, and you're able to think ahead, and you can kind of combine things like stormwater basins. You don't have to have one for each development. You just have one if you can think about it ahead of time. So that saved them a lot of time and effort when they plan that out. They also did the same thing. They took over an old Air Force base where they adapted a lot of those amenities there into housing. We had a guy give us a tour of his project, which was a lower income building, and a lot of the talking was about, especially from all of us, how do you make it pencil? How do you make it pencil? They do have an advantage over there in Colorado where they do not necessarily have to go by prevailing wage, and they can also avoid some secret requirements. For them, it's if they go 4 floors or lower, the regulations are a lot less. And so that's a big deal how they made things work out over there. We also had a good meeting with the mayor of Denver, who talked about the way they address problem of homelessness. So there's a lot of ways that they did it. He's managed to make a significant noticeable dent in the issue in just his 7 or 8 months as mayor. I told him I was a little bit jealous of that, but we'll see how we're going to potentially go in contact with him, myself, and Supervisor Baines from Sutter County, Supervisor Bradford from Yuba County. We're going to have a meeting and see about probably revisiting a more in-depth conversation with the mayor of Denver. I think his last name is Johnston, and how he addressed their homeless issue. I know tiny homes were involved, and not only to provide market rate housing, but also to use it to cycle their homeless population through that on their way up to sustainability on their own. So it was a very good conversation that he gave us for that. We've been continuing our meetings with the president of the Sikh Temple out in Terra Buena. We had our most recent one, was that yesterday? Seems like about 3 days ago. And happy to report that their application is completed and submitted to the city. So that's definitely good news. I just received that news this evening. And that is it. I do want to thank Shannon for your help tonight, helping us work through all of this. And I think we're adjourned. Thank you all very much. Oh, you have one more thing, sir?
Yeah, just one more thing. Just wanted to say, and I know Tony Curlin, I think you were there as well, but our mayor just finished his film and did an incredible job, and they previewed it on Sunday. And I just wanted to let everybody know you did a fabulous job, and it was really good. So check out his movie.
We'll put it on YouTube or Vimeo, and we'll let you guys know. Thank you. I'm glad you liked it. It was good.
I forgot.